There is an Emmy award-winning American toku adaptation that's not the Power Rangers. In summer of 2006, Aki Komene got the special opportunity from Toei to develop a American Kamen Rider adaptation, a feat that was only ever accomplished once before this, to some underwhelming results. Very underwhelming results, so underwhelming they specifically didn't call this show Mass Rider to distance itself from the 90s one, and also because the showrunners just thought Kamen Rider sounded cooler, which it does. Thankfully, Komine was able to create something that was actually pretty good, along with help from longtime colleagues and Kamen Rider fans Steve and Michael Wang, which led to Toei greenlighting a Power Rangers-esque adaptation of Kamen Rider Ryuki, set to be written by Nathan Long. They claim they specifically chose to adapt Ryuki as it had the largest number of riders, 13 in total, allowing them to include a diverse cast of heroes, most of which are straight white men. But there's a chick! The show was marketed as an action-packed children's drama with a massive toy line on CW Kids, which was my personal Saturday morning block of choice. I mean, come on. It was set for 40 episodes and a movie that unfortunately never happened. In fact, the show was canceled after episode 35, with the rest of it being uploaded online out of pity. The show was really never that big of a hit, regardless of its daytime Emmy award-winning status for outstanding stunt coordination, by the way. It just never caught on, even when you compare it to other non-Power Rangers American toku adaptations like Beetleborgs or BR Troopers. Dragon Knight is just not talked about as much by people outside of the online toku community. But inside of the toku community, Dragon Knight is considered one of the best American toku adaptations of all time, some claiming it to be even better than most Power Rangers series. So there's really some conflicting data here. On the one hand, this show is one of the all-time greats, rivaling Power Rangers, winning an Emmy, and getting the very precious green light from an apprehensive Toei after the failure of the first Rider adaptation. But on the other hand, the show was preemptively cut off, and no one outside of our niche internet spaces seems to care or even know about its existence. Is Kamen Rider Dragon Knight a failure, or is it just misunderstood? Today, we're watching Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. We start with episode 1, Search for the Dragon. The show opens on a missing person flyer for Frank Taylor. A woman is alone in a parking garage with an attendant reading a comic book and eating Cheetos. It's just now hitting me that this is a job that's already been replaced by robots, and I can honestly kind of see why based off this. The lady encounters monsters that appear in the reflection of a window, and they attempt to kidnap her. When the attendant sees her struggling, she looks to be alone. Right as the monsters are about to pull her into a reflective sign, a Batman! A helmeted biker. There's just gotta be a better term for this. A masked rider. Oh, I hate that one. A disguised cyclist jumps out from a sign and begins to beat up the monsters. Not sure why the parking garage guy can see him but not the monsters, but he untransforms to reveal himself to be a really cool looking dude. I think I made that joke before when I first made a video about this show, but I really don't know any other way to describe a man that looks like this. He rides off into the night, hears a strange noise, and transforms again, announcing himself as a Kamen Rider. We can work on it. I think we can still workshop that. Maybe like enshrouded motorist. That could be that could be pretty good. We then get the show's intro, and I don't know why I find it so cool. I say this whenever we talk about music or intros on the channel. I really don't know a lot about that type of stuff, but it's very nostalgic for me, and I think it's really cool. We find Kit Taylor waiting at the police station with his father, stating things have been very difficult since he left, and mentions that he wished he knew where he was.
Wake up, kid.
The correctional officer, Detective Grimes, is an old friend of Kit's dad and mentions how this isn't Kit's first run-in with the law, and explains how now that he's 18, there's not much he can do for him now if he were to get into trouble again. He offers Kit a ride back to the foster home where he lives, and the camera pans to the glass behind him.
Go home, kid.
His father also tells him to search for the dragon and to remember the contract card. Kit returns to the foster home to find his bags already packed for him and a new kid taking his room. A different kid named Jesse wishes him goodbye and gives him a picture with Kit's dad as a birthday gift.
Isn't this Sherry's picture frame? You shouldn't steal, Jesse.
It turns out Jesse had stolen the picture frame wanting to be like Kit, but Kit explains that he doesn't steal things, he just ends up in a lot of misunderstandings.
You see? Misunderstandings.
Jesse escorts him out.
Remember what my father used to say, when the going gets tough, the tough go riding.
Oh, that's cute. We never see this kid again. He hops on his motorcycle and rides to his father's old apartment. No clue who's been paying the rent on this place, but it seems very spacious, with enough room to fit a motorcycle. Kinda jealous. Once there, Kit finds a photo of his family and begins to reminisce.
She would have been very proud of you, son.
He looks to his right and finds a black box containing a deck of cards. And in the distance, he hears his dad asking him to search for the dragon, accompanied by the ringing sound from earlier. The deck begins to glow, and a dragon rushes out from the glass of a neighboring building, knocking Kit off his feet, and the ringing sound begins to grow even louder. We cut to a bookstore where we meet two of the workers. Maya is an aspiring journalist investigating the large number of currently ongoing missing people cases, working at the store owned by her aunt. And Trent is wearing an emo Care Bear shirt. Bigger news publications are covering up the missing people cases Maya's been investigating, and she plans to post her story to way above topsecret.com, a very well-accredited news source in this universe. It's very prestigious. I don't really get it. But first, she needs to investigate the rumors of a masked vigilante before publishing her findings.
Yeah, but I'm still trying to work the masked vigilante rumors into it.
Masked vigilante? That's not bad. I was thinking camouflaged racer, but vigilante has like a ring to it. Maya's friend Lacey enters the store wearing new clothes.
I call it Trailer Park Debutante.
I call it Hillbilly Tomato Milkshake.
The fuck's that even mean? Trent informs Maya that she's been scooped. His words, not mine.
Reports another sighting of the masked vigilante on way above topsecret.com.
And I don't know if I'm saying it wrong, but I really feel like that's just not how you say that.
Masked vigilante.
Maya runs out to investigate after hearing the news, and we find Kit tweaking it in the streets. He sees the mirror monsters from earlier around the city and finds them going after Maya. He tries to defend her, but she obviously is unable to see them until one of them pulls her into a mirror. She's thankfully rescued by the cool dude from earlier in the episode, who beats up the monsters in a much better way than Kit was. He chases after Kit, demanding his advent deck, but first smashes Maya's camera after she takes a picture of him. What a diva. Kit runs away, holding tight to the advent deck, but does drop his wallet with his ID inside.
Kit Taylor.
The deck begins to glow again, and a monster knocks Kit into a car, where he's sucked into the reflection and transported to a mirrored dimension. He then transforms into a gray suit, similar to the masked vigilante. I changed my mind. I think vigilante actually kind of, you know? Thankfully, the cool dude transforms and fights the spider, while Kit does his best to keep up. The spider is destroyed, and they're now being chased by the dragon, where the episode ends on a cliffhanger. After reviewing the first episode of these shows, I always like to invite you guys to watch it for yourselves before reviewing the rest of the series. And, you know, in terms of the first episode, this is a great start to the series. The acting can be a bit tough, even for Power Rangers standards at some moments, but I hear that's pretty typical for CW shows. While the story so far is great, it's definitely not to the quality of Power Rangers in terms of production. The fight scenes and Japanese footage sound a little empty, like you can hear the recording booths they're sitting in.
I told you to stay back.
I don't know how Power Rangers does it, but you could just like feel the world around them better. I don't know if that makes sense. They also have the Alien Ranger voice filters on during fights.
What is this? Where am I?
Which I actually don't mind. Thankfully, they do tone it back a little bit in later episodes. If you want to watch the show, I recommend the Internet Archive. There's a ton of different pages that have the show on it with varying levels of quality. I'm gonna link my favorite one in the description. That's also the one I plan to use to edit this video. Fair warning, I believe it comes from the Japanese DVDs, so you may see random Japanese text pop up randomly, typically to introduce the audience to names of different characters. It's not too intrusive in my mind, so hopefully it doesn't bother you. We move on to episode 2, Contract with the Dragon. In this episode, the armored racist, nah, we can't even use that one. That's bad. Explains to Kit that they can leave the mirror dimension through any reflective surface. Back at the bookstore, Maya is admiring Kit's license when she's berated by questions.
Did you find out anything about the Masked Vigilante?
Not to keep flip-flopping, but I'm not gonna pretend. The way he says vigilante makes me personally really mad. In a way that it shouldn't. Lacey walks in and takes the wallet from Maya, commenting on how cute Kit is, and this clearly makes Trent a little jealous, and he warns Maya to stay away from him.
Seriously, stay away from this dude. He's been in a lot of trouble since his dad disappeared.
We then see this black monster reforming the spider from earlier using a dark mist. Maya sees the Fonz on his bike outside of the bookstore and attempts to chase him down to get reparations for her smashed camera, but she can't find him upon turning down an alleyway. We cut to nighttime and Kit wakes up from a nightmare, following the events of the day prior. It ends on the image of him merging with the Red Dragon and his father reminding him of the contract card. After hours at the bookstore, Trent is able to hack into the police database. Him and Maya begin to look into the case surrounding Kit's dad, who went missing about a year ago. The next day, Kit is riding his motorcycle when he's chased down by the mysterious jockey. They begin to press each other, with him wanting the advent deck and Kit asking for more information.
If you contract with that dragon, you'll get vented.
They hear the noise again, and they find a blue-collar worker covered in spider webs. He didn't have to do that role. It was cool seeing him do that role, but he didn't have to do it. It didn't get him there any faster. If anything, it was the opposite of time efficient, I feel. Homeboy decides to transform again once they bring the man to safety.
Kamen Rider.
And Kit watches the battle, wishing to join in.
What can I do to help, Dad?
Remember what I said, son.
Prompting Kit to find the Red Dragon, presenting it with the card as it flies straight into him, turning his suit red, allowing him to properly join in battle in the mirror dimension. He's able to fight by pulling cards from the deck that is now strapped to his belt and placing them into a gauntlet, summoning different weapons and abilities from the dragon. This is something I actually really like about Dragon Knight and Ryuki in general. Each rider has a different method of reading cards from their deck, and it gives each of the suits a very unique sense of identity. Some use swords, guns, shoulder armor, shin straps, and I really like that because speaking in terms of general Kamen Rider, not just Dragon Knight or Ryuki, modern seasons use the belt for everything, and in situations like this where you have multiple riders, doing small things like that is a great way to add a stronger sense of personality to each suit. Kit is able to defeat the monster, and the other Kamen Rider is upset with Kit for making contact with the dragon, now referring to him as Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. Afterwards, Kit runs into Maya and she returns his wallet, and she begins to ask him about the mysterious man and how they were both able to see the creatures. He refuses to talk to her until she brings up his missing father, which piques his interest. She wants to take him back to her aunt's bookstore, but on the way there, Kit hears the mirror noises, with Maya also being able to recognize it since she was also brought into the mirror world. She guides him to the nearest window where he properly transforms for the first time.
Kamen Rider!
And while fighting the monster, he's joined by another Kamen Rider, this time sporting goggles and an orange crab outfit. Episode 3 is called Kamen Rider Inscisor. The Orange Rider attacks with Kit just wanting to talk. The mysterious motorist finds them fighting and decides not to get involved. Kit retreats from the battle, and shortly after we see Kamen Rider Inscisor has also returned to the real world. Yeah, I know some of you are younger, but people actually used to want to dress like this. We thought this looked really cool back in the day. His name is Richie Preston. He's a spoiled brat and comes from a wealthy family, and almost all of his lines have to do with money.
You look like you should be flipping burgers. $1 million. What? $1 million each.
One day, his father decided to cut him off from his wealth and hires a lawyer named Walter Connors to give him the news. Upon showing Richie his potential future working in fast food, he offers him a deal, saying he could pay Richie $1 million for every Kamen Rider he defeats. Richie accepts, and we see Walter looking into a car window with the reflection of a black monster staring back at him. The main bad guy in Dragon Knight is actually a really cool twist on what they did in Ryuki. Not to get too much into it because we are still kind of early in the video, but where the main villain in that show like found people that were specifically down on their luck and like tempted them to fight with the promise of a wish. In this show, most of the riders are like victims, with the main antagonist often manipulating them into becoming riders, leveraging their desires and insecurities. It makes him way more menacing because he's actively tampering with their lives, forcing them to become riders. Because as we'll find out later, Richie wasn't picked to be a rider at random. We then cut to him. Yeah, I ran out of names. Training on a rooftop, clearly taking notes from the Troy Burroughs School of Martial Arts. And he transforms, seemingly without reason. Maya gets an AOL message from JTC.
JTC? The JTC.
Who sends her pictures of the mirror monsters. Kit walks in, annoying Trent, and gets a private room with Maya. She tells him who JTC is, shows him the pictures, and claims that the mirror monsters may be linked to Kit's missing father, which makes him emotional.
Thank you, Maya.
I'm thinking of getting a parakeet.
What the fuck, Aunt Grace? Afterwards, Kit is sized up by Trent and Lacey, and is later stalked by Inscisor, who brings him into another battle. Fonzie overhears them fighting and drives straight into a wall, overwhelming Richie.
2 against 1? That's not fair.
After the battle, Batman decides to teach Kit how to fight by beating his ass. Episode 4, A Rider's Challenge. The two exit training and masked Wing Knight. His name's been in the intro of every single episode. It's also revealed that his actual name is Len in this episode, and I'm just sick of the bit, alright? It's not funny. There's rumors he was originally going to be played by the late and great JDF, and as awesome as that would be, I understand why they would want to cast someone else in order to avoid comparisons to Power Rangers, and I think Matt Mullins does an excellent job with the role, with great help from his martial arts background. Anyways, Len explains to Kit that Kamen Riders are the protectors of Ventara, which is the world behind the mirrors. The Ventaran riders had their advent decks stolen, and they're being given to people on Earth. He confirms that including the two of them, there are 13 riders in total, and they're all trying to take Kit down for working with Len. After this, there's another monster fight where they actually work together to take it down. In the B-plot, Maya is written up by her editor for not checking her facts in her latest report, and he assigns her to work with a more experienced reporter, Michelle Walsh, who scooped her in episode 1. They interviewed the blue-collar worker from episode 2, and there's actually a funny bit with Maya watching Len fight a monster while he's talking, and all the while Michelle is disregarding his story. The black monster from before walks through a mirror and turns into Walter Connors, and receives a call from Richie, who's having his bike towed. Kit is home reviewing his cards and the new powers they bring when the mirror noises pop up again. The main two confront Richie, with Len challenging him to a 1v1, which ends with him venting Inscisor as Kit watches in horror.
This is so
When asked, Len explains that Richie has been vented, meaning that he's trapped in the Advent Void, a purgatory that exists between the dimensions. This tragedy causes Kit to throw his deck in a drawer, vowing never to transform again, but the sounds grow louder, making it impossible for him to throw it away. The episode ends on another peculiar bicycle-esque where we can't see his face. This bit's never gonna end. Episode 5, Power of 2, opens on Kit fighting a monster while the Green Rider watches. He untransforms. Boy, I wish there was a more concise way to say that. He unmorphs, and we discover that this rider is working with Walter Connors, referring to him as Mr. Lansing. They're making plans to take down Kit, and in this episode it's revealed that Connors is actually an alien named General Xaviax, who's already taken over Ventara. The Kamen Riders were formed specifically to bring him down, and they were once successful, until one of the riders went rogue and vented the others, stealing their decks and siding with Xaviax. Now he plans to kidnap everyone on Earth and make them his servants on Ventara. Mr. Lansing is the rider from Earth he's gifted the Torque deck to. He's assisting Xaviax in this process, but is annoyed that they're only kidnapping civilians one at a time. Xaviax reveals he plans to do a mass teleportation, but he first is looking for civilians with specific DNA profiles in order to gain data and power the teleportation device. At the bookstore, Trent has learned how to say vigilante.
The masked vigilante is the guy who smashed your camera?
And Maya reveals Len and Kit's secret identity to him and Lacey. Their discussion is interrupted by Kit asking to vent, as in like literally like talk out his frustrations, to Maya about what he's witnessed with Kamen Rider Inscisor. Len also visits the bookstore and hopes to speak with Kit, and during this conversation, Kit attempts to quit being a rider. Unfortunately, he's unable to quit now that he has a contract with the dragon. Len never wanted Kit to be a rider, but now that he is, he has a request.
I'm sorry that I wasn't able to keep you out of this, but now that you're in it, I could really use your help.
This leads into a motorcycle fight scene, which by now you should know I love these. And I'm having a hard time figuring out what is and isn't Japanese footage in this show. I have a pretty well-trained eye when it comes to Power Rangers, but I'm having a hard time with Dragon Knight so far. I often wouldn't know if I hadn't already seen Ryuki, though some shots you can really tell the footage is a bit lower quality, or some shots will just have that iconic early Heisei look. Often the best way to tell is if certain shots look super jumbled together. I don't know why the editors for this show just don't have the sauce the Power Rangers team has when it comes to stitching together different bits of Japanese footage. Whenever they want to cut something out, they do this big flash effect. Len and Kit get pretty friendly in this episode, and I honestly don't remember Ren and Shinji ever liking each other this much in Ryuki. Kit opens up to Len about his missing father, and the two agree they need to work together in order to save the world. But this newfound friendship might be short-lived, no matter how wholesome it may be, with Kit clearly looking up to Len with his dad missing. But we have to move on to episode 6, Kamen Rider Torque. Len is hanging out in Kit's apartment, and he explains how the original Dragon Knight was the traitor. They're interrupted by a monster attack and morph. During the battle, Torque appears. I believe this is his first time actually fighting, and I love how his suit is portrayed in the show. Before firing, you can always hear Torque charging up his gun. And it's a small detail that I don't remember in Ryuki that really adds this whole futuristic Terminator vibe. He tells Kit that Len is actually lying to him, and that Wing Knight is actually the one who is working with Xaviax, even going as far as to show a flashback with Wing Knight being rooted on by Xaviax attacking Torque and a Dragon Knight, who he refers to as Adam. But despite the convincing flashback, Kit refuses to believe him, prompting Torque to stage a fight with Wing Knight, with Xaviax cheering Len on in the background. And I guess that's enough for Kit. He literally just saw them stand next to each other, and he was convinced. In one sense, I want to call Kit stupid, but you also have to remember that he's like a naive teenager with no parents that's like been thrown into this insane situation. So he's bound to be super impressionable and like not know who to trust. He confronts Len shortly after.
Are you that easily convinced?
What would you do if I was helping Torque, huh? Would you vent me too?
And also in this episode, Maya gets a call from JTC telling her about a new ward in the city hospital, full of people he refers to as sleepwalkers, individuals who are physically awake but mentally asleep.
Like maybe they just got spit out of a UFO?
Or a mirror.
This prompts Maya and Trent to investigate, sneaking into the hospital and finding...
Oh my gosh. It's Kit's dad.
Episode 7, Friend or Foe, goes further into this, but I first have to mention Len having this sweet-ass civilian fight. I feel conflicted watching this because on the one hand, I remember how this role was meant for JDF at first, and I think about how incredible it would be to see him do this stuff. But Matt Mullins also does most of his own stunts in this fight, and it's incredible. JDF is the GOAT, but I'm not mad at all about Matt Mullins being Len, and this fight really cements that. Kit and Mr. Lansing, his name is Drew, okay, are illing it when Maya escorts them to see Kit's dad in the hospital. And it's a very sweet moment, as Kit seems genuinely excited to see his long-lost father.
Dad? Dad!
Keep your voice down.
Dad!
Drew explains that his state is due to him being kidnapped by Xaviax, with his life energy being drained and used to power Xaviax machines. He claims the only way to cure him is to defeat Xaviax and Wing Knight. The doctor discovers they've snuck into the hospital, but Drew escapes through a mirror before being seen. Thankfully for Kit and Maya, Detective Grimes from episode 1 makes an appearance and gives them clearance to visit Kit's father whenever they want. Dragon and Wing Knight fight in a monster battle, and afterwards Kit confronts Len for working with Xaviax and tells him that he's found his father. Len claims that Drew is lying to him and that there is no cure for the sleepwalkers, as the only man able to treat it is no longer with us. Kit believes that Len is lying to him and runs off, which prompts Len to go after Torque.
So what's the price for selling out your whole planet? With Xaviax's power, I'll be a king.
This ends with Torque blowing up a fucking building, which he does by inserting his gun into the back of his mechanical bull monster. In the next scene, Kit begins to question everything, but at the end of the episode, he finds Drew at his door and swears his allegiance to him, hoping to take down Xaviax and save his father. We're now on episode 8, Kamen Rider Camo. Ah, jeez. I wonder who's gonna show up here. Slippery Shark! This episode actually has the largest number of riders introduced, with Camo, Thrust, and Strike. They sound like dancers at a G.I. Joe themed strip club, but like with dudes, like a male strip club. I'm actually surprised they're introducing Camo so early, to be honest. He was a movie exclusive rider in the Japanese show, so you'd figure they'd like hold off on introducing him since there's so little Japanese footage. His name is Grant Stanley, and this episode opens with him winning a sparring match with his MMA teacher, who catches him cheating, placing metal into his gloves. He's not worried about learning martial arts. Rather, he's interested in proving himself as being able to defeat the best fighter there by any means necessary. Xaviax introduces himself to Grant as a soldier combat specialist and hands him a deck, promising him the chance to become the best fighter on 2 worlds.
Your ticket to glory.
He takes Grant back to his castle and tells him he needs to defeat Wing Knight, the greatest fighter of Ventara. We then cut to Drew and Kit fighting the shark monster, with Drew handing Kit cards to use, but all they activate are abilities for Torque. I don't know why, but this is probably the scene I most vividly remember watching in 2009. I think I just found the whole shtick here to be really silly as a kid. But after defeating the monster, they go back to Kit's house for some grub.
Tater tots.
Tater tots it is.
Meanwhile, Maya is on the phone with JTC again, who offers to meet up with her in person to talk about the investigation, and she's kidnapped by a mirror monster before they're able to hang up. Thankfully, Len is able to save her from the monster, and Kit, Drew, and Grant arrive, wanting to fight Wing Knight. Unfortunately, Grant wants to take him down on his own, not wanting to share the glory, leading to him fighting Kit and Drew instead, with Drew wanting to defeat Grant and Kit wanting to talk things out, assuming they're all supposed to be on the same side. Xaviax is annoyed with their inability to work together and sends Kamen Rider Strike to send in Kamen Rider Thrust. Literally, that's all Strike does in this episode. Xaviax calls him to go get Thrust. I don't know why they didn't just go straight to Thrust, to be honest. Trent is worried about Maya at the bookstore due to her disappearing out of thin air.
She's disappeared.
Don't be silly. She can't disappear. It's not like your social life.
She's in Ventara, admiring the city that looks exactly like any city in America, to be honest with you, wondering where everyone is. Len explains that this is his homeworld, and that everyone was kidnapped by Xaviax after the defeat of the Kamen Riders and their leader. She offers to help Len get Kit back on their side, and the episode ends with them being interrupted by a rhino-looking rider. Bringing us to episode 9, Kamen Rider Thrust. Len shoves Maya into a mirror to get her away from Thrust, and the two proceed to duke it out. Thrust believes he's participating in Battle Club, in hopes to, quote, win his life back, with Wing Knight being the first round match. Trent is still at the bookstore worrying about Maya.
Come on in and help me with these philosophy books. They're too heavy for me.
To understand?
To lift.
This pissed me off more than it should have, and I think it's because it's so obvious that she's looking for help carrying the massive books in her hands, but Trent decides to make a dig at her intelligence, which inadvertently makes him look stupid.
I do not like this.
Oh, yeah, I could tell. Maya is actually trying to call Kit, who's busy getting yelled at by Drew for messing up the last fight. He's confused because he thought all the Earth Riders were on Wing Knight's side, so why would Camo want to destroy him? Maya's call gets sent to Kit's voicemail, where her message to him about Drew is played out loud. I realize I might have to explain this for some of you because you may not know what a landline is. Okay. Phones weren't always portable. And if you were to receive a voice message and not answer the phone back in the day, it would play out loud for everyone to hear. People don't know that nowadays. This message, along with the Camo situation, causes Kit to begin to question Drew, but he goes with him to fight Wing Knight anyways, where they're interrupted by Camo again, who explains his ambitions to defeat Wing Knight in hopes to be the greatest fighter on two worlds. And these delusional ramblings remind Kit of the lies Xaviax fed to Inscisor, leading to Kit piecing it together that Torque is actually the enemy. After this, Kit, Thrust, and Wing Knight witness Torque venting Camo, causing Thrust to leave out of fear, and without a home, Kit allows Len to move into his place. Moving us to episode 10, Battle Club. Thrust is revealed to be Brad Barrett, who always wins.
I always win. Brad Barrett always wins.
He is a disgraced motocross racer who's recently been caught cheating after a video was found of him allegedly tampering with another racer's bike. Xaviax approaches him and reveals the rest of the video, showing that it wasn't Brad tampering with his opponent's bike. It's on this like iPod with red duct tape. I don't really know what the hell this is supposed to look like. I've honestly stared at it for hours, and I think it's the thing I question most in this show. Xaviax tells him that he will give him the video as long as he participates in a tournament he's called Battle Club. Brad attempts to take the video from Xaviax, but he sends in Kamen Rider Strike to shake him down. Maya is still missing according to the people at the bookstore.
If she's not back in an hour, we're calling the police.
I don't know why she doesn't just call them. This is so dramatic for nothing. Like, the audience knows where Maya is. It's not like they're doing anything during these cutaways anyways. They're just yearning for her return. There's no tension or like drama building, you know what I mean? She and Kit are bringing Len home and begin to ask why Xaviax has to trick people into becoming riders. Len shows them a picture of him with Kit. Except it's not Kit, it's Adam, the original Dragon Knight. The decks are tied to the individual riders, so Xaviax has to find people with an exact DNA match in order to use them. This leads to Kit asking why Xaviax wasn't involved with him receiving his deck, but Len assures him that he most likely was. Xaviax scolds Drew for venting Camo and attempting to vent Dragon Knight, saying that no one can vent Dragon Knight until Wing Knight is defeated. Drew leaves, and shortly after, Strike also leaves.
Oh, and enjoy your evening. Looking forward to it.
Kit visits his father in the hospital for guidance and continues to have visions of him speaking. In the next scene, Kit interrupts a monster battle where we witness Thrust finishing it off with his rhinoceros. Afterwards, Brad begins to press him for more information about Battle Club, and finally, Maya returns to the bookstore, and she has to close as punishment for scaring everyone. Thankfully, she's able to keep her meeting with JTC while working, and he gives her a variety of pictures showing her another rider we have yet to meet. He's reported to be residing in Gramercy Heights, and according to JTC, the monster kidnappings have gone down significantly since he's arrived. Maya is hopeful that this is another good rider, and JTC is about to leave the store, but not before he's able to rizz up a beezy.
One more thing.
Get your bag, Maya. Between him, Kit, and Trent, Homegirl's got options. Upon leaving, we find this in the mirror of his motorcycle.
Everything's been set in motion.
Well done, Kamen Rider Strike.
Episode 11, Vent or Be Vented. Thrust and Dragon Knight continue to fight. Kit explains that Battle Club doesn't exist, causing Brad to back off. After this, Drew finds Brad and reveals Xaviax's identity, telling him the same thing he told Kit, that it's up to the two of them to defeat Xaviax and Wing Knight to save the world. This causes Brad to become even more confused and walk off. Later, Xaviax confronts him in his monster form and tells him the only way to clear his name and get the video is to defeat Wing Knight. Kit finds Len asleep on his couch and has another vision of his dad, implying that Len is still hiding something from him. He falls asleep on the floor in front of Len like a puppy dog and wakes up confused when he's gone. Trent and Maya continue to investigate this magenta rider from Gramercy Heights when conveniently, Michelle calls asking if Maya has finished working on the transcripts of the interviews they did the other day, complaining that they're late. Maya comes up with an excuse and stages a fake monster attack with Trent and Lacey in hopes to bait this new rider.
I'm a monster. Roar.
They're almost arrested for filming without a permit in the park, as detailed by Detective Grimes. There's also this mime, I don't know why he's in this scene, I guess he actually thinks that he saved Lacey from a monster attack. Meanwhile, Michelle Walsh is there and gets a picture of the trio with Trent in the monster outfit. She goes unnoticed, and thankfully for Maya, the mirror monster is nearby, allowing her to get pictures of Kamen Rider Sting. Kit is also drawn in by the sound of the mirror monster, and the two riders work together to take it down. Wing Knight would have also joined them, but he's too busy being harassed by Brad. After defeating the monster with Sting, Kit is arrested.
This is my planet, alien. By order of the United States government. You're under arrest.
Episode 12, Kamen Rider Sting, picks up where we last left off, with Sting referring to Kit as an alien. We get a flashback and discover that Sting is named Chris Ramirez. He comes from a family with 4 generations of Marines, and unfortunately that streak ends with him due to his asthma. This disappoints his father, who's so pissed.
The Ramirezes are Marines.
Even hitting them with the Spanish at one point.
Dad, siéntate, hijo.
And of course, Xaviax arrives, telling him that he has a chance to join the United States military to defend his nation from the alien invasion. Kit unmorphs to show Chris that he's human, but this doesn't sway him, and he begins to cough.
My name's Kit Taylor.
Yeah, right.
They witness Wing Knight battle with Thrust, with Len inches away from ending Thrust's life, but he pauses, unable to finish the job, allowing Brad to walk away and live another day. Sting then attacks Wing and Dragon Knight, but he has an asthma attack midway through. I actually really like Chris. I'm not sure if he's my favorite, because that's honestly a toss-up between like him, Len, and Drew, to be honest. But as someone who has suffered from pretty gnarly coughing fits, I feel weirdly seen by this show. I don't have asthma, but like I have this weird throat thing. I'm normally able to cut it out of videos for the most part, but you know, I kind of feel like I talk like this from time to time.
Agent Simons told me about your tricks.
Like if you were to see me in person, I might do a little pisses off my mom all the time. She yells at me every day because of it. I'm realizing now I didn't even have a punchline for that. She just yells at me. I love you, Mom. They're unable to convince Chris that they're on his side, with him and Wing Knight having another fight, and thankfully Chris has another asthma attack. So, no harm, no foul. But Chris notes that Wing Knight did have the opportunity to vent him there. Xaviax confronts Drew for betraying him, bringing up how he almost vented Kit and how he was trying to turn Thrust against him. He sends Strike after him, but thankfully Drew's able to avoid confrontation by hiding in a Penske truck. Excuse me, that's a Unsk truck. That's an Unsk truck. This episode ends with Brad reflecting on his racing career and the promises Xaviax made to him.
Brad Barrett always wins.
Episode 13, The Thrill of the Hunt, opens with Wing Knight reflecting on his inability to finish off Thrust and Sting in the previous episodes, calling himself weak and questioning how he's gonna be able to save the world if he's not able to do what's necessary. Chris calls Xaviax to give him a status update on his confrontation with the other riders.
Give Wing Knight any room and
he will take you out.
Except this never happened.
Lacey talks to Trent about how she's worried about Maya. I've forgotten to mention up until now, but like, Lacey doesn't believe anything that's happening in the show. I don't know how, but like she just refuses to believe anything is actually happening. Thankfully, Trent doesn't back down from the opportunity to simp for his queen.
Why does she have to be normal? Take Van Gogh or Tesla. They were nuts. She's gonna be just as big like them one day.
Turns out Maya's hanging out with Kit, who runs into Drew this episode.
I'm not here to fight. Xaviax lied to me.
Thankfully, Kit isn't buying any of Drew's nonsense this time, and this leads to the two actually fighting. Maya notices Chris attempting to intervene, but pulls him aside to talk some sense into him.
He's just a kid trying to save his dad.
Thankfully, it works, leading to Kit and Chris working together to take down a monster this episode, after Drew leaves the battlefield, who is in rough shape, causing him to reflect on everything that's gone wrong in his life, when we get his backstory. It turns out that he was a professional scam artist. Down on his luck, Xaviax gave him the opportunity to get back on his feet, as long as he uses expertise and persuasion to recruit other riders for his army. Drew is still on the run, but unfortunately for him, Strike is watching.
The thrill of the hunt.
He
He said it! He said it!
That's the name of the episode. That's it! And finally, Brad and Len have another confrontation this episode, and they do this thing where they push their bikes against each other and screech their tires. I don't know what this accomplishes for either party besides balding out their tires, but it looks pretty cool. We're now at episode 14, Xaviax Promise. There's a lot of fighting in this episode. Torque is fighting Strike, Wing Knight is fighting Thrust, and of course, Dragon Knight and Sting come to help Len. Eventually, all the fights coalesce with 6 riders in one massive confrontation. Torque quite literally pulls out the big guns and does his final vent, which causes a massive explosion where he actually vented no one. But he doesn't bother to check, so he leaves acting like he did something. Shortly after this, Strike decides to just vent Brad for no fucking reason. I still question why he does this. Brad literally did nothing wrong against Xaviax, but whatever, I guess. Fucking bye, Brad. It leads to this fight with Strike's Cobra facing off against Kit's Dragon. I know it's Ryuki footage, but god is this awesome. Unfortunately though, Strike decides to end the fight early.
Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm saving you for later.
Afterwards, Kit and Len have to explain to Chris that Brad has been vented. And after this discussion, Chris offers to join the team.
Friends?
You think it'd be pretty good for his asthma, you know, if he was properly vented? You think it'd be pretty good for his asthma? You know, if he was properly vented?
Oh, brother, this...
I'll stop. Maya finally shows back up to work, only to leave moments later to help Len and Kit bring Chris up to speed. But before that, we find that the picture she took of Sting in a previous episode don't show up on her camera, as the lens is not able to see into Ventara like her. She then finds an email stating that she's been fired from her blog site after Michelle Walsh posted a hit piece on Maya, calling her a fraud and posting pictures of her staging a monster attack. The majority of the second half of this episode consists of the second fight between Drew and Strike. It's an intense scene, as Strike toys with a severely injured Drew who just can't seem to get the upper hand, ultimately ending with Drew getting vented. Which is sad because I actually really liked Drew. I kind of wanted to see him end up working with Kit and the others, but like, it was a good run. Definitely going down as like one of my favorite riders in the show probably. I love a manipulative piece of shit character. I think that's why I was attracted to my ex-wife, to be honest. Episode 15, The Many Faces of Xaviax, is a clip show, with the main cast catching Chris up to speed on everything that's happened so far. If you want a recap of this episode, you can just replay the first half of this video. What is interesting though is that this is our first filler episode thus far, and I believe this is due to a break in production, as this released on April 11th, 2009, with episode 16 coming out on August 1st. It's time for an intermission. I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't have anything planned. I have nothing. I do really have to pee though, so if you could just give me a second.
Is he gone? Did you finally leave? Okay, good. He would never leave, okay? It fucking smells back here. What the fuck does he feed those cats? Jesus. Anyways, hang on. What are we talking about? Oh, Dragon Knight. Alright, yeah, let's talk about shovelware.
So, Dragon Knight came out in 2009, which was also the same year that we got some prime Wii shovelware, baby! We had some bona fide stinkers on this thing back in the day. I mean, don't tell me you never played Calvin Tucker's Redneck Jamboree.
3, 2, 1, rowdy!
Now that's a real winner. Or how about the metric fuck ton of licensed games made for the thing? You couldn't take a single step in a Walmart without seeing at least one of these things staring at you. And one of the most popular genres for these games to take the shape of was fighting games. You had fighting games based on Godzilla, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Naruto, Bleach, Dragon Ball, and of course, who could forget, Cartoon Network Punch Time Explosion. And the first Kamen Rider fighting game, or even first Kamen Rider game in general released on the Wii, was Dragon Knight, which released a full 17 days before the first Kamen Rider game released on the Wii in Japan. And why is that?
It's because they're the same game.
Okay, well, not literally. You aren't going to put in a cheat code into Dragon Knight and all of a sudden you can play as Decade. But these two games are based on the same engine. They're both slightly different ports of Kamen Rider Climax Heroes on the PS2. They both play the same, have most of the same features, and even have the same models for both Dragon Knight and Wing Knight.
Unfortunately, because all the riders in this game use the same card system, it's effectively 13 of the same character, which means very little gameplay variety.
Oh, sure, the gameplay itself is different from base Climax Heroes, and not every rider has the same cards, but because they decided to make the stupid decision to only let your Advent gauge fill up through non-special attacks, it leaves very little opportunity for creativity when it comes to combos. Granted, when it comes to fighting games, I stink at them. So maybe there are better combos you can pull off, and I'm just so monkey brain that I can't figure it out.
Now the DS game, on the other hand, that for sure is clunky. While yes, it technically runs fine, it's a 2D beat 'em up in a 3D environment, which means you have to shift around to be able to hit your opponent.
That means that sometimes your opponent can move to the side mid-attack, causing you to miss, and then making them hit you. It's slow, it's clunky, and I don't like it very much.
Drink water, kids. One thing of note for this game that is very interesting, though, is the voice cast. See, because this game released basically towards the end of the show's run, the original cast would have been too busy filming to be able to provide their voices for the game. So, instead of that, they just had to get stand-ins. And who did they get as the stand-ins? Is it Jeremy down the hall in finance? No, it's no one special. Just, you know, some of the most prolific anime voice actors at the time.
You had Kyle Herbert as Xaviax, Liam O'Brien as Wrath, Laura Bailey as Siren, Kaiji Tang as both Strike and Thrust, Sam Rigel as Inscisor, and Dragon Knight is voiced by, I shit you not, Johnny Young Bosch. You know, Ichigo from Bleach. Oh, and I guess he was also a Power Ranger at some point, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, that about covers the Dragon Knight video games. My name is Brevin. I make videos on YouTube related to Tokusatsu, and I'm currently working on some videos talking about Tokusatsu video games. Thank you for Christian for leaving your door unlocked so I can get in really easily. But I should probably leave before he comes back. Enjoy the rest of the video. Oh, also, if you like Ultraman, but you want to see it with English voices, I recently did a dub of Ultraman X Episode 1, and you should go check it out. I think it's really good. Alright, but don't tell Subaraya. Okay, bye.
Alright. You know, it's actually a good thing that I got up, because I left my door unlocked. Yo, someone could have came in here. So my initial plan for this segment was to sort of theorize what season they would pick after Ryuki if they were to adapt another Kamen Rider. And after having a call with my friend Max in preparation for this video, it's like so obvious that it's Kabuto that it's not even worth having a whole segment to itself anymore. Like, it's so obvious that it's Kabuto. The main reason being that they wanted a season that specifically had a lot of riders, so that removes half of them right there as it is. And you have to remember that this is pre-2009, so you can't count things like Gaim or whatever else. And obviously you can't pick Decade for obvious reasons, you just can't do that right now. And so that leaves like only a handful of riders. And where I think Kabuto sort of wins out over other candidates is just like how accessible the designs are. Not to say designs like Kuga and Agito can't work, but a lot of what makes those designs interesting is predicated on a pre-existing knowledge of what Showa era Rider is supposed to look like, since they're meant to be an evolution of like those suits. And obviously they're trying to distance themselves as much as possible from masked riders, so I would assume they wouldn't, even though obviously Kabuto is also bugs, so maybe my whole theory doesn't make sense here. But where I think Kabuto really wins out is just how accessible the designs are. Like, one of the strengths of Ryuki, and why I think it works so well for an American adaptation, is that you can immediately look at these designs and be like, this is a dragon, this is a bat, this is a snake, this is a cow. Like, you look at the designs and you know this is what it's meant to be. And I think the designs in Kabuto have that same strength in that you can look at these and be like, this is a bee, this is a scorpion, this is a dragonfly, these are grasshoppers. The only one that I would genuinely think would give American children like a run for their money is Kabuto himself and Gatak, obviously. But then you would just have to name the show something like Kamen Rider Beetle, and I think they would be able to put it together, right? It's so obvious that this would just work that like it's almost not even up for discussion. The only other thing that I was really gonna mention, and this is something I really want to debate with you guys in the comments if you want, is like, do you think a follow-up adaptation, an adaptation of Kamen Rider that's specifically following up Dragon Knight, do you think that would need to have the mirror world in it, or like Ventara and stuff like that? Because I low-key kind of feel like it would. Like, I know Modern Rider doesn't face Shocker anymore and stuff like that, even though it was such a big part of the series when it first started. Obviously the show's kind of evolved past it, but if you were to make a follow-up to Dragon Knight, I feel like you would have to include a lot of the elements that make Dragon Knight what it is, and to not include the mirror world and Ventara would sort of like strip the essence of what makes the show in terms of like the lore and the mythology, like what it is. So like that's something I've been thinking about a lot, is like, if they were to adapt Kabuto, would they like add in mirror world elements and stuff like that, or am I overthinking it? Like, would kids not care? Am I just being silly? You know, like, we forgot about the Morphing Masters for what, like 30 years, and then they came back, and then, like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, I guess, but like, it's something that I think about a lot. Like, I feel like if they were to ever adapt another Kamen Rider in modern day, again, the answer should be obvious, and it's 0-1. I'm not even gonna have this debate. It's 0-1. But the reason why I say that is because they have to be very specific about not setting a precedent for what would be involved in the series, or like be like an element of the series going forward. Like, if they were to start with Double, right? Let's say like we didn't do Ryuki and we started with Double, like that was the first Rider adaptation, and then they were to do more from there. I feel like Double sets a precedent. I guess they don't have to adapt this element, but like, if you were to adapt Double with the 2-in-1 Kamen Rider element, I feel like you would set this precedent of like, okay, a Kamen Rider is a hero that merges with someone else. Two heroes merge together to be one hero to be twice as powerful, right? And this show sets up a Kamen Rider to be like the Defenders of Ventara. They are from the mirror world. They are all these things. So I feel like you would kind of have to, like, I really do feel like you would have to include the mirror world. I don't know, just food for thought. Episode 16, The Hero of Gramercy Heights. This is the first episode to not use any footage from Yuki whatsoever. According to the wiki, I don't really know, to be honest. This episode picks up with what happened at the end of episode 15, with Chris having an asthma attack, saying he can't help fight Xaviax due to his condition, and Maya wanting to talk to him. Xaviax advises Strike to separate Sting from Wing and Dragon while they look for more riders to recruit, stating that Sting is the weakest link. Kit asks Len if it's possible they could find the other Earth Riders before Xaviax, considering they already know what they look like. But of course, Len points out that even if this is the case, they have no means of being able to track them down. But Kit remembers that Maya has been talking to JTC recently, who seems to have a lot of information on the Riders, and wonders if they should reach out to him for help. This sparks Len's interest, and the two show up to the bookstore to ask Trent if he would know how they could contact JTC. Not sure why they thought to ask him before Maya. I feel like they imply that it's because they know Trent is jealous of him, but like, they're not boys with Trent like that. They don't know how he rolls. They have no way of knowing Trent wants to bork her. Regardless, Trent does give them JTC's license plate, so their plan does work out. They look it up in public records and find that it's tied to the address of an abandoned warehouse, because it's not a tokusatsu without at least one of these, where they encounter this robot that the two of course have to fight.
Interesting, isn't it? They go looking for JTC and we get attacked.
The majority of this episode is about Chris reflecting on his personal journey thus far, with becoming a rider, fighting monsters, and saving people. And this is probably why he's one of my favorite riders, because throughout this monologue, you really start to feel bad for him. He's just this kid that wants to make his dad proud. He wishes he could tell him about him being a hero and saving the citizens of Gramercy Heights, and you could just see that like he takes so much pride in protecting people from the Advent beasts, and now he's like doubting himself because of his asthma and the fact that he's not even the original Sting to begin with. So now he has like this like weird imposter syndrome, and he's like disappointed with the fact that he wouldn't be a hero if he was never a twin with one of the Ventara riders. Maya assures him that he truly is the hero of Gramercy Heights, and just as he begins to gain some confidence, the two run into Kamen Rider Strike, challenging Chris to a 1v1, moving us into episode 17, The Power of Three. Another episode without any footage from Ryuki. And I wonder if these last two episodes are like that because the production break allowed them more time to film, or if the production break was because they needed more time to film. You know what I mean? Like, food for thought, I guess. I don't know, who really gives a shit? This episode introduces us to Kamen Rider Axe and Spear, and you'll never guess what weapons they use. That's right, a Red Bull and a Glock 40. The episode begins with Strike attempting to vent Sting, who's having another asthma attack.
What's the matter? Frog in your throat?
Thankfully, Kit and Len arrive to help out.
Your big brothers came to save you again.
This prompts Chris to quit the fight, believing his asthma is holding everyone back, being the easiest to vent. Len takes the opportunity to teach Chris a lesson.
Just break it. Now break that. No matter how you look at it, it seems always stronger together.
And while I appreciate the sentiment, if Chris is having that much trouble breaking 3 twigs, as an ex-Marine in training, maybe he like just should quit. I don't know, like check this out. See how easy that was? But this is definitely one of the most heartfelt moments in the entire show.
For Earth and Ventara.
For Ventara and Earth.
For Ventara and Earth.
The team aspect of Dragon Knight is one of the most stark differences when comparing it to its Japanese counterpart. Because in Ryuki, it's literally every man for himself. And there are no good guys or bad guys really in that show. Everyone has their reasons for fighting, and the moral ambiguity is one of the major themes for the show. In this show, while it can be every man for himself at times, there's an obvious difference between who's good and who's bad, and these three have a really wholesome connection. But this moment is huge for Len's character arc, considering before how he wanted to do everything on his own, and now he ends up leading this team. Kit now has a group of people he can actually rely on, including Maya, who give him a sense of community that he's been missing since losing his parents. And Chris is finally accepted by people for who he is, that are actually willing to give him the opportunity to make his dreams a reality, now being able to protect people regardless of his ailments. They're genuinely such a sweet trio, and I would really hate to see anything happen to them. This is gonna fucking ruin me. Kit has another talk with his father at the hospital, who tells him that he needs to look out for himself over anyone else, reminding him that
blood is thicker than water oil. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Everything's gotta come back to the bikes, huh? I've been trying not to talk about it because this show literally is called Kamen Rider, but like, it's gotta end somewhere, right? There's gotta be limits. Ironically, I feel like modern Kamen Rider is more common than Rider recently, and this show is definitely more Rider than Kamen. You feel me? Everyone in this show wears a leather jacket, drives a motorcycle, and it just be a lot sometimes, alright? Chris receives a letter from the pulmonologist reminding him that strenuous physical activity could have a major effect on his health. At the bookstore, Lacey wants to talk to Maya about how irrational she's been recently when she's interrupted by the Riders asking to speak with JTC. Maya tries to contact James for them, but is interrupted by Michelle Walsh, who shows up for the sole purpose of having a face-to-face shit-talking session, and I honestly have to respect the game. Len wants to do more training.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think this single-handedly made me hate Kit, Chris's baby girl, and I'm actually kind of upset about this. Strike is annoyed with his loss, and thankfully Xaviax has found the Cho brothers as they're seen stealing a motorcycle. They grew up poor and turned to a life of crime to make ends meet.
We just want our slice of the American dream. It's pie. Right.
Honestly, I kind of like the Ring of American Dream a little more, to be honest. That's just me. I do find it insane that nearly every other rider outside of the main three is a huge piece of shit though. I guess you could argue that Brad was just down on his luck, but I find it really interesting that almost all of them are criminals that also ride motorcycles. Cannot forget the motorcycles part. They need to ride motorcycles. So obviously they're persuaded to join Xaviax after being offered a large briefcase of money.
We're, experts in subtraction and addition. Ka-ching!
I can't tell if that's at least a little racist coming from one of only 2 Asian characters in the entire show, but I'll give them some grace, as I found that most criminals do have a passion for mathematics. And that's not even like a joke. I'm not even kidding on that point. That's genuinely a thing I've noticed over the course of my life. Felons love math. You think lawyers are smart? Try asking an ex-drug dealer how many ounces are in a gallon. James stops by the bookstore with spring rolls and agrees to meet Maya's friends under the condition that he gets to set where and when. The next day, training practice goes well for the boys, with Len teaching Chris an important lesson.
A fighter with no lung power needs to make every shot count.
And when meeting JTC, the 3 see him being attacked by a mirror monster and end up getting separated, with Sting coming into contact with Strike.
A fighter with no lung power needs to make every shot count.
Unfortunately for Chris, the training from this morning was not enough for him, and Strike ends up pinning him on the ground. Thankfully, Len and Kit are there to save him again.
Deja vu all over again.
Kinda starting to get over this. Like, Chris has to get at least 1 win before the end of the show, or else I'm knocking him down a tier. We move to episode 18, Brothers Cho. This episode has a fight scene between Len and the Cho brothers, and it's what won Dragon Knight the Emmy for outstanding stunt coordination. And you can tell that they knew this fight was gas when the teaser at the end of the last episode only showed that. Normally the teasers consist on some major plot revelations or cliffhanger-esque moments, but like the end of episode 17, they only show Len fighting the Cho brothers, and it's kind of worth it. It's an incredible fight, and there's no amount of talking I could do to give it justice. Like I said, the link to the Internet Archive is in the description, but you could also find this one on YouTube, and I like just heavily recommending it for the sake of just watching it. Anyways, the episode begins with the boys splitting a pizza cut for a kindergarten holiday party. Chris and Kit question what Len's life was like before becoming a rider, and he explains how it's all he knows. The riders on Ventara were picked from a young age to inherit the Advent decks, and it's a huge honor for them to be chosen to defend their world. And I really like this scene because there's some really good chemistry on display here, with the boys bantering with one another.
So what about you, Len? What'd you do before you became a Kamen Rider?
He was a drill instructor.
And great character acting with Chris doing this half laugh, half cough. Kit mentions how he's a troublemaker as a kid and brings up a story when his dad defended him at the principal's office after doing something wrong. This causes Chris to grow quiet and leave abruptly, since he knows his dad would never do the same for him. He then goes on a bike ride reflecting on his dad, his asthma, and him being a disappointment.
We'll make it count.
Maya receives a message from JTC detailing the riders saving him from a monster attack, and this has to be one of my few complaints with Dragon Knight's story, to be honest. I kinda wish we didn't know Strike was JTC, or at the very least that we didn't know what JTC looked like, I guess. I feel like the audience knowing who JTC is kind of ruins the mystery surrounding that character. Imagine how much more impactful the scene of him getting jumped by monsters and like Strike showing up would be if we didn't know either of those 2 things I just mentioned. And the only thing making it pertinent to the plot is that Maya wants to boink him, and she can still want to boink JTC without Strike ever unmorphing on screen, you know what I mean? Lacey finally confronts Maya for playing make-believe with the riders, with Trent defending her sanity, and Michelle is outside of the bookstore listening in on the conversation, with her making a phone call telling someone that she has information, and specifically doesn't mention a news story. Len has something he wants to ask Kit.
It's time to replace the Ventara Dragon Knight. I want you to become the true Kamen Rider Dragon Knight.
The issue is that Kamen Riders live in suspended animation and only wake up once every 12 years on rotation. This obviously presents Kit with some hangups, as he'd have to abandon his father. Len has his Emmy award-winning fight with the Cho brothers and steals their decks. He throws them over this ledge, only to also throw Albert over this ledge. Yeah, by the way, Spear's name is Albert. I'm not really fond of it either. But I question why he wouldn't just keep the decks. He would have erased 2 enemies with relative ease before ever even needing to transform. This is kind of a major fumble on Bro's behalf, and all because he wanted to look cool. It did win him an Emmy though, so like I guess it was kind of worth it. Kit finds Chris acting weird, writing a letter. Shortly after this, he visits his dad at the hospital, but finds a snake coin in his place.
Strike.
Episode 19, Semper Fi. Strike approaches Chris, offering him a chance to cure his asthma if he vents Wing Knight. Chris mentions the concept of Semper Fidelis, referring to the title of this episode. It's a Latin phrase used in the Marines a lot, meaning always faithful, referring to their loyalty not only to the country, but like their fellow soldiers. So of course he doesn't back down and attempts to fight Strike, but it becomes too much for him, leading to him retreating on his manta ray. Maya is complaining to Trent about Lacey, who is about to enter the bookstore to have another chat with her. When Len comes in looking for JTC, who's followed by Kit looking for his father, who's followed by Chris out of breath looking to end Xaviax soon, who's followed by the Cho brothers who slam Maya into a fucking counter. Tensions rise as the 2 groups of riders stare each other down. They decide it's best to fight in Ventara, where they'll have a little more room, with each of them leaving through the reflection of the front door of the shop when Albert, of course it's Albert, decides to transform in front of everyone, messing up the bookstore. Lacey, of course, is still outside to witness everything. During the fight, Kit has the chance to vent Axe, and genuinely contemplates doing so, but hesitates. Chris becomes overwhelmed by the sheer number of mirror monsters being summoned by Spear, who is named Albert, by the way, Albert Cho, but he turns around to find Strike. Len is knocked to the ground, and Strike takes the opportunity to vent him. With Wing Knight unable to move from his injuries, and Kit being distracted by Axe, Chris says that this is his opportunity to make an impact that counts.
Semper Fi.
Episode 20, Letters from the Line. The next episode begins with Kit grabbing Chris's deck off the ground and holding it to his chest, shedding a tear for his fallen friend. The bookstore is still in shambles from Spear transforming inside. Kit and Len return without Chris, informing Maya what's happened. Both begin to blame themselves and walk away. Xaviax congrats the Cho brothers on a job well done, reminding them not to vent Dragon Knight until they finished off Len first. Kit arrives home and notices Chris left his backpack at his place. Inside, he finds his notebook and a stick from when Len was teaching them about teamwork, along with a letter addressed to his dad. He reads it to find an incredibly heartwarming message, with Chris apologizing for not living up to his expectations, never being able to be the hero his father raised.
You were that hero.
I genuinely lost it at this moment. Like, I never really cry at TV like that, but like, the idea of this poor kid who's like, feels like he disappointed his father, wanting nothing more than to just like be the hero of his community and like save people, dude. It's so sad. This fucking ruined me. That was supposed to be louder. Len is disappointed with the fact that he couldn't save Chris, and the fact that he's so emotional over his loss, worrying that he's become too soft. He's able to blow off steam fighting some mirror monsters, while Kit is chased down by the Cho brothers, one of whom, I should mind you, is named Albert, by the way. Albert fucking Cho, who mock him for being a child, looking for his dad and crying for losing his friend. And while I would love to say that Kit kicks their asses here and gets his get back, they genuinely fucking embarrass him in like the nastiest way possible too. It's really bad. Michelle finds Lacey shocked over the discovery that the Kamen Riders are real, and she tries to get Lacey to snoop through Maya's laptop for her, claiming that it's for Maya's safety. And while I am annoyed with Lacey falling for this, she canonically is incredibly stupid, so like, this kinda gets a pass. Kit returns to the bookstore as they're getting a call from JTC, stating that he knows where Kit's father is. Trent and Maya worry that it's a trap, but Kit has no patience and runs out immediately, Maya following after him. Bringing us to episode 21, Strike's Ultimatum. This is the third and final episode of the series without any footage from Kamen Rider Ryuki, And it's extra special because this episode aired on daytime television. Alright, I know that doesn't sound that great, but like, CW Kids was only allowed to air one daytime special a year outside of their Saturday morning block. So in 2009, they chose Kamen Rider Dragon Knight to have this special privilege over like Sonic X or Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds or Dinosaur King. They weren't airing Dinosaur King back at that point. Like, I'm being silly. I'm sorry. Regardless, it's important to know that this like is an episode that was advertised more than others. It starts with Xaviax monologuing to Kit's dad about his son.
I've grown sort of fond of him. In fact, you can almost say that your son is like a son to me.
The Cho brothers arrive, and Xaviax scolds them, explicitly saying that he doesn't want them to even touch Dragon Knight, which is crazy considering what Strike's plan is this episode. Lacey stops by the bookstore with coffee for Maya, but she's already run out with Kit at this point, so she gives it to Trent, asking to use Maya's computer to check her emails. Trent's surprised by her sudden change in attitude, and allows Lacey to use the computer, where she inserts the USB given to her by Michelle. While that's happening, Len arrives at the bookstore asking where Kit and Maya are. Trent gives them the address they've ran off to, saying he thinks it's a trap and Len should check it out. Kit and Maya arrive to the abandoned warehouse to find Kit's dad with JTC.
You can't be JTC.
The name's James, Maya.
Now see, imagine how like insane that reveal would have been. Like how incredible that would be for this extra special episode. Like if we just now found out that JTC was Strike. Like, you see why I'm bothered by this, right? Like I'm making sense here. JTC hints at his backstory, stating that Xaviax helped him escape from prison through a mirror when the federal government finally found him for leaking classified documents. I very distinctly remember his Japanese counterpart escaping prison in a very similar way. And I honestly am surprised that they didn't use any of the footage for that in this show. Maybe that like you couldn't make it work, but I could see how that would be the inspiration for this in a way. He tells Kit that he'll cure his dad for Wing Knight's advent deck. Kit refuses, and the Cho brothers arrive to back up Strike. It's a really interesting fight because they have these mirrors set up, so the three of them use it to their advantage to beat up Kit, which is fun, and eventually Kit starts to use it against them, and it's a really creative choice given like the powers that they have in this show and all that. I don't remember Ryuki ever playing around with the mirrors this much during fights. Maya escapes with Kit's dad while they're fighting, and Len arrives for backup, but he's greeted by 3 mirror monsters. Kit's able to take some major ground during the fight with the other 3 riders though, sending Strike and Axe to Ventara. Spear is left on the ground, and everything slows down. Kit pulls the final vent card from his buckle.
This is for Chris.
He inserts it into his gauntlet and launches into the air, striking Spear in the chest. Albert reaches out to the mirror, begging for help from his brother Danny, who's unable to get up and begins to panic as he watches his brother slowly fade from existence. Kit sits for a moment, shocked by what he's done. Len finally arrives and asks him what's happened. Kit remains speechless, walking out of the building, handing Len Spear's advent deck. Lacey returns the USB she inserted into Maya's computer to Michelle, and we end the episode with a motorcyclist on a white bike sporting a leather jacket, so you know what this should mean.
Kamen Rider.
Episode 22, A Rider's Resolve. The new rider makes light work of some mirror monsters and is ready to join the battle.
Let's go venting.
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it!
Kit talks to his dad about venting Spear.
You disappointed me, son.
I saved you.
You wouldn't have had to save me if you'd worry about your family before trying to help other people.
And is shocked by this, as his father always told him that the noblest thing a man could do is defend those in need. His father tells him that he doesn't have much longer, and that Kit has to make a choice. Danny promises to get vengeance for his brother Albert. You know, Albert Cho. Xaviax explains that Dragon Knight is needed as his ace in the hole, and threatens to vent Danny if he touches Dragon Knight. Len is admiring his collection of advent decks, paying extra attention to Chris's, and Kit goes to him for advice about how to deal with venting someone. Len admits that he doesn't have all the answers. He was never the leader on Ventara and was often considered a lone wolf, so he doesn't know how to help him with this one.
You lead by example. Everything I've learned about being a Kamen Rider, I've learned watching you.
Their sweet moment is interrupted by a monster attack with Kit running ahead of Len. It turns out to be Axe, attempting to get revenge for Albert. Albert Cho. And he's about to vent Kit, but suddenly, a new White Rider intervenes, scaring Danny off. She begins to go after Kit until Len interrupts. She's shocked to see Len working with Xaviax's Earth Riders and untransforms. Len does the same and is surprised to see the woman, calling her Case. Episode 23, Kamen Rider Siren. Danny reports the appearance of a new rider to Xaviax, who's surprised to hear about it, believing that he destroyed all the Ventaran riders. He also orders Strike to vent Danny, given his obsession with vengeance against Dragon Knight. Len is clearly comfortable around Case. She's the person that woke him up from his containment pod and sent him to Earth when the other riders were being attacked by the original Dragon Knight. She questions Kit's ability to keep up with the two of them and challenges him to a sparring match, where he unfortunately loses. Len tells him not to worry, considering she's one of the best fighters of Ventara.
And I guess I'm the worst.
And Kit goes on a ride, reflecting on Siren, Chris, his inability to vent Axe, and his disappointed dad. Lacey apologizes to Maya and asks for a job at the bookstore and hopes to keep an eye on her, as per Michelle's instructions. She becomes belligerent when denied a job, causing Trent and Maya to grow concerned. Speaking of Michelle, we see her entering this large building and walking through a vast, empty white room. It's a cool shot, but I can't help but believe that this is an incredibly inefficient use of space. There should be cubicles here, a water cooler, old white women talking about Pelotons and their kids' throw up. That's the vision I see for this place. Middle class, corporate America, just the embodiment of capitalist ideals. That's what we need. She passes the USB Lacey inserted into Maya's laptop to a man who analyzes the files.
Bring in Kit Taylor.
Meanwhile, James has a chat with Danny, who's upset about the loss of his older brother. JTC reveals that he also had an older brother who was locked up for a crime he didn't commit, but Danny refuses to listen to reason and quits Xaviax's army, prompting a fight. Strike refuses to vent him, hoping that he's learned his lesson.
Nobody treats me like that! Nobody!
Kit continues to think about everything he's been through, clearly bothered by what's happened with Siren and his father, to the point where he fucks up this PB&J. That's how you know it's bad. It's a dark, rainy night, and he hears noises coming from the mirrors in his apartment. He approaches to find a black Dragon Knight that throws Kit into the wall, leading into episode 24, Dark Temptation. Kit is forced to fight the mysterious Black Rider, who refuses to answer any of his questions. He summons a black dragon to fight Kit and knocks him out, waking up on his couch and to the sound of knocking on his door. It's Michelle Walsh greeting him as Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, asking him about Xaviax and Ventara. He walks away, refusing to answer any of her questions.
Phase 1 negative. Move on to phase 2.
Strike explains why he didn't vent Danny to Xaviax, claiming that it would be 3 against 1 without him, saying they need as many people as they can get, especially when you consider there's only 1 deck left for a rider. Xaviax tells James that he'll have to take responsibility if Danny does anything to Dragon Knight, but Danny continues to reflect on his lost brother, promising that nothing will stop him from getting vengeance. Lacey walks into the bookstore, now dressed very differently.
I better do some reading up so I can be your friend again.
Kit arrives shortly after to tell Maya about his encounter with Michelle. Confused by how she's found out so much information, Maya performs a computer scan and discovers that all of her encrypted files have been downloaded without her knowledge. Len stares into the distance, remembering the first time they took down Xaviax. He tells Case about his regrets with Chris, and she asks him about Kit, but Len continues to believe in his potential.
If you trust him, then I trust him too.
The two discuss the importance of finding the last rider before Xaviax and are interrupted to fight a group of monsters. Kit witnesses how well the two fight together, noting how they were able to handle the situation without him, making him grow increasingly frustrated, causing a small spat between him and Len. Case notes how similar the spat was to the many spats Len shared with Adam, the original Dragon Knight, before he betrayed the other riders. Kit visits his dad in hopes for consulting to find a mysterious man standing over his bed.
Who are you?
I've been many things. Brad Barrett knew me as Charlie Feathers.
Xaviax.
Head of the clan.
Xaviax revives Kit's dad and gives them a moment to talk, allowing Kit to ask one important question.
Would you give up the one person you love in order to save 1,000 strangers?
Xaviax cuts him off, and Kit realizes that Xaviax has not only been disguising himself as Kit's father, but he's responsible for all of the trouble he's got into with the law in the beginning of the series, which actually might explain why all the other Earth Riders are bad people. Xaviax has just been manipulating them all of their lives as well, I guess. But Xaviax claims that Kit was the one rider he couldn't reach, with him having no vices or ambitions, except a love for his father, and says that he'll bring him back as long as he vents Wing Knight. Episode 25, Dropping the Axe. Len has defeated two monsters when Kit arrives, kicking him in the back. Len questions what's gotten into him, surprised by the sudden shift in personality. Kit just wants his father back. Suddenly, the emblem on his buckle changes slightly, and he's transformed into a black version of Dragon Knight. He picks Wing Knight up by the belt and slams him against a wall, and gets a few more shots in before throwing him to the ground. Len asks him to stop, but Kit doesn't listen. He pulls a final vent card and performs a rider kick, finishing him off. He walks away as we watch Wing Knight evaporate into thin air. He finds Siren atop a building. He throws her several stories to the ground below, and she asks why he's doing this. He tells her that blood is thicker than motor oil, and summons the dragon that carries her below the ground and throws her across the way. She always knew he was working for Xaviax, but Kit says it was never about that. Just wants to save his dad. He wakes up next to his father in the hospital, begins to shake, and questions what's happened to him. Trent and Maya try to figure out how the government has gotten access to her private files. And I need to remind you guys that this is like pre-Edward Snowden whistleblowing. So like this is back when people like played Pokemon for fun and not like for Google to illustrate pathways for geomapping data. So like these guys are genuinely confused how the government has access to like any of their technology. Lacey suggests that maybe it's a good thing, as Maya was over her head. The government may be better suited to handle everything with the riders. We pan to a hidden camera stuffed inside a Chow doll. I don't know, this thing kind of looks like those little shits from Sonic. Maya is forced to delete everything from her laptop.
5 years of networking and research. It's all gone.
Lacey dismisses it, and Trent begins to bug out in fear of being butt poked by aliens. Genuinely, that is his fear. That's what he says. Well, he doesn't say that, but like that's what he's getting at. Maya is increasingly frustrated as to how Michelle could do this to her, and Lacey finally admits that it was she who leaked Maya's info. Kit is visiting Gramercy Park, where he remembers a time he was playing football with his dad, who could tell that something was bothering him. He had a friend at school that wanted help to get a bully expelled before he could beat him up. His father tells him that it's great that he wanted to help a friend, but he needs to think about how his actions could affect the bully, and states that the ends never justify the means. Kit walks away, having resolve from this memory, when suddenly, Danny appears from nowhere, tackling Kit and throwing him into a mirror, wanting revenge for his brother. Albert Cho. That Len and Case arrive as the two are exchanging blows. Len wanting to jump in, but Case noting that it's best for Kit to get this win on his own. JTC is watching the confrontation, with Xaviax prompting him to transform and vent Danny. Len and Case want some answers after watching Kit being saved by Strike, and Kit begins to tell them everything about Xaviax and his father, and assures the two of them that he's ready to be a real Kamen Rider, and that he'll do whatever it takes to bring Xaviax down.
I think you are.
We then get this really cool callback.
For Ventara and Earth.
Xaviax now tells James that Taylor is fair game, having exhausted all avenues for getting him to join his side. I'm not gonna lie, I thought they were like actually building to something with this. Like I thought this was gonna lead into Onyx or like the final form or something like that, or like the original Dragon Knight. Like I thought they were actually gonna like do something with Kit. Instead, like instead of just Xaviax having this weird fixation on him, I guess. I don't know. And Xaviax reveals that he's been saving one final rider in case of emergencies.
Meet Kamen Rider Wrath.
Episode 26, Kamen Rider Wrath. Michelle is still in the black van listening to the trio's conversations. Case apologizes to Kit for being standoffish, and he goes to see his father at the hospital, where he's knocked out and kidnapped by two men. Maya chews out Lacey for stealing her data, and surprisingly forgives her. I wouldn't. That's all the commentary I can provide on that. I wouldn't forgive her. They come to the conclusion that they're being tracked and that the bookstore is probably wiretapped. They want to warn Kit and the other riders, but they're unsure how to contact them since their phones are probably bugged, and they're likely to follow Maya to Kit's apartment.
They'll follow you.
Yeah, but they won't follow me.
Actually, they fucking would. They most likely would, and in the off chance that they wouldn't, why would you like scream that? Why would you literally yell that information across the room where you know that they're like probably listening? So instead of just sending Lacey, they decide to put Maya in a Lacey outfit, again fully talking about their plans out loud, and they fucking fall for it. So now that she's left the bookstore, Maya has a hard time finding Kit considering he was just kidnapped, so she decides to call his cell phone, even though she knows it's been bugged. Like, I don't know. These kids are just like pissing me off, really. Like this, I don't know what it is this episode, man. They got to me. They broke me. But finally she checks the hospital to find a pair of sunglasses in Kit's dad's room.
The government.
New reaction video just dropped. Feel free to use this one on Twitter whenever they finally cut Social Security or like raise the price of the Nintendo Switch. It's honestly timeless and like really versatile. JTC tries talking to Kamen Rider Wrath to no response, as Xaviax explains that he's been mind wiped, just like Kit's father, and takes over his body to fight the other riders, the two entering the bookstore through a window. Lacey sneakily calls Maya using her cell phone behind her back.
Maya, help! The Kamen Riders are here! They're holding us!
Lacey is canonically stupid. Strike crushes her phone, but thankfully Wing Knight and Siren arrive to rescue her. Len is able to sense that Wrath is Xaviax.
Xaviax.
And I really haven't bothered mentioning this until now, but like the show will slow down footage a lot for dramatic effect, and not just like cool fight footage, but like footage where the characters are just reacting to shit. Sometimes it works really well, and other times you can kind of tell that they're trying to fill the full 20 minutes for the episode. This moment, and really a lot of the moments in this episode in general, has to be one of the worst displays of that problem in the entire show. Of course, Trent and Lacey leave, and Michelle's dumbass questions how the hell Lacey could leave twice. I don't know, man. Like this episode, this might be my least favorite episode. I feel like I have to know that I am still enjoying this show. I don't know. But to talk about something I do like, this fight scene in the bookstore, excellent. Chef's kiss. The riders are climbing on the shelves, breaking stuff. Siren busts through a fucking wall. This entire episode is worth it for this fight scene, to be honest. And it ends with Kit being locked up in a jail cell. Episode 27, Attack of the NoMen. Maya arrives to a torn up bookstore with only Michelle Walsh waiting for her, who reveals she's been working for a government agency called NoMen. She's been pretending to be a reporter this entire time to discredit the blog Maya's been working for, and she warns her of the geopolitical consequences of reporting on the story, claiming that it would end up with a war on two worlds. This logic has Maya agreed not to report on the story.
But I didn't say anything about not rescuing Kit.
Trent and Lacey arrive shortly after, and Maya gives them the news, requesting their help to free Kit. She thinks Trent can hack into a government database, and though he is a bit apprehensive, he agrees to take the risk and calls his nerd friends to help him out. They're very stereotypical nerds. I don't want to hang on it too long, but they speak strictly in terms of video games and computer rhetoric, but they're excited at the opportunity to hack into a government website. They also tell Case and Len about the situation, and they go to search for Kit, but they're confronted by Strike and an untransformed Wrath, making Len uncomfortable, since Ventara Wrath was his mentor. Kit wakes up to his cell being open, allowing him to walk out of the NoMen office to find a monster outside and his deck on the ground. The NoMen record this entire exchange with the monster and knocks out Kit once he's untransformed. Episode 28, A Dragon Caged. It's an early morning and the boys are still hacking while the girls are asleep on the couch. Trent's friend, Fish, oddly enough, not as weird of a name to me as Albert Cho. Fish's freaky ass just can't keep his eyes off the beesies. They're able to hack into the database and Maya gives Trent a smooch as a reward. The NoMen bring Kit in for a formal questioning when he requests a cup of water that he intentionally spills to escape the building. As he's escaping, Maya is entering along with Len and Case, who enter through the building's reflective surface, where they meet up and encounter agents in the big white room. They have these guns that cover reflective surfaces and a tar-like substance that stop riders from escaping, but eventually they steal one and find a way out, where they find Kit battling it out with Wrath and Strike. His leg is injured, and the team are able to save him by escaping through a window that Maya is able to cover up with the gun they stole, forcing Xaviax and Strike to stay behind.
For Ventara and Earth.
The episode ends with the entire cast reuniting at the bookstore to figure out what to do now that they're on the run as they heal Kit's leg. When asked how Ventara has such advanced technology, Len answers that it's from the Advent Master. Episode 29, Calm Before the Storm, opens with Xaviax upgrading Strike's deck while the gang sit around at the bookstore and catch up on recent events. It's another clip show, but thankfully they pick up from where the last recap left off. Instead of going back to the start, it ends with the entire cast swearing to work together
for Ventara and Earth.
For Ventara and Earth.
But Michelle is at the door, and thankfully the team's able to escape through a nearby mirror, and that ends the recap episode, which means that it's now time for another intermission. So at this point in the video, we've officially been introduced to every single Kamen Rider in Dragon Knight, which means that this is the best time for a tier list. Y'all fucking thought I was done with the tier list, huh? Thought I was just moving on to these multi-hour long fucking thought pieces. No, I'm still making these videos. I'm just hiding them in the bigger videos. Starting with Kit, I'm gonna put him in B, not because I hate him necessarily. In fact, I do like him quite a bit. I feel like the writers really want him to be this sort of youthful, ignorant sort of teen that's very wide-eyed and is kind of thrusted into the situation where he doesn't know what's happening, he doesn't know who to trust, and all these different things. And I think the actor does a really good job of portraying this. It's just that there's times where he could feel a little too whiny for me, and it kind of takes away from that a little bit. Now, I should note that for all of these riders, we're going to be ranking their Earthworld counterparts, but Len and Case are going to be special exceptions to this, as we never meet their Earth counterparts in the show. So we're going to be just going strictly off their Ventaran counterparts. And if I were to also rank all of their Ventaran counterparts, we'd be here all day, and a lot of them really don't have personalities, so it's not worth it. Like, genuinely, outside of Len and Case, we only meet like 3 other Ventaran riders that are like anywhere near as important. That being said, Len is going in S, strictly just based off vibes. I feel like Len is... he's perfect. I've been glazing him this entire video, but this mysterious bad boy, whatever, you could say it's an overdone trope and X, Y, and Z, but in my opinion, I don't care. Matt Mullins is an incredible actor, and I love what he does with the role. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep him as like my favorite, but he's definitely top 3. That being said, Richie, I'm gonna put him a peg below Kit. I don't hate him, so I'm not gonna put him in F, but I don't like him as much as Kit. He's not around enough for me to have a super strong opinion about his personality and stuff, but from the moments he is there, I do find him kind of likable. I know I kind of clowned on him, talking about how all of his lines are about money and him making dumbass comments about flipping burgers, but like, he's kind of charming in that way, and so I can't help but put him in C. Up next, we have Torque. He's also gonna he's gonna go in A. I think there's other riders that are more deserving of S tier. My problem with Torque is that it feels like he doesn't have a full story arc. I feel like he should have joined the main cast. I genuinely am sad to see him leave the show as soon as he did, especially considering how much footage there is of his Japanese counterpart in Ryuki. I thought he was going to be as much of a mainstay as Strike. I don't know, I kind of like the idea of him being this like rogue third element, and I wish they kind of played more with that. I really liked his actor too, so I don't know, it just would have been cool to have him around longer, and I think that's his biggest flaw, is that we just don't spend enough time with him. But his actor is super charismatic and charming by the very nature of him meant to be this cons man salesperson, which is what I think puts him above Kit. Next up we have Camo. I don't want to put him in F necessarily, but same sort of deal. I wish we had more time with him. His whole shtick is that he wants to be the best fighter in the world. And while I think that's neat, there is no inciting incident that brings us that motivation. With Richie, we see his father cutting him off, and we have the understanding that like he grew up rich, he was very affluent, so he's not used to having to work for things. So it would make sense that he would be drawn to the rider deck. Grant really doesn't have a backstory, and that's definitely to his detriment. What Grant really needed was like a backstory that explained why he needed to be the biggest, baddest, toughest guy in the room. Like, imagine his backstory was like him being bullied as a kid, and he was like this scrawny nerd that got picked on a lot and beat up, you know, or maybe he was like jumped once in the street, or like something happened to his family, or something that like where he felt vulnerable, and so he needed to compensate for that feeling of vulnerability by becoming the strongest, toughest fighter in the world. Like, I really do think there's a whole plethora of backstories you could have thrown out there that would have heightened his character, that would have definitely put him in at least B, potentially A, you know? Next up is Thrust, and I'm gonna put Brad. He's not, I don't hate Brad. He's definitely one of the riders I feel more sympathetic towards. I wouldn't say he's like incredible, you know what I mean? I feel like C's getting a little overcrowded here. I do like him, not that much. Probably, I'm gonna have to put him in C. Honestly, I'll put U up, and I'll move U to B, just because I think Richie's kind of funny in concept, and I don't hate Kit, so I'm gonna move him up to A. After that, we have Strike. He's going in S. The actor they got to play JTC is incredibly charismatic and really great. And he's one of the riders that's there throughout the majority of the series, and I think that's very beneficial to him. When JTC himself is vented, spoiler alert, his Ventaran rider takes over and kind of completes the rest of his arc, which does kind of feel like cheating in one sense, because it's technically not the same character. But that allows him to have what feels like a more fleshed out, completed story. And in general, I just like the suit. I like the action and choreography that happens with the suit, even though I know a lot of it is Ryuki footage. I don't know, I just really like Strike in general. Next up, we have Chris, who is also going in S. I've talked about this one to death. Chris is the most... Chris definitely has the most sad story in the show, and probably the one I think I might relate to the most in some ways. So I feel like I really do have to put him in S. I don't know which is my favorite, though. Len might be my favorite, but I do think I like Chris a little more than Strike. Up next, we have Albert Cho. And same sort of reason I like Richie. It's the meme. Let's actually do both the Cho brothers right now. I do think they're kind of charismatic. I think they're kind of goofy. Actually, I do like Danny a little more than Albert, to be honest. His whole story about wanting to seek vengeance for his brother and wanting to get his come up is one of the better motivations for riders in the show, I feel like. Definitely a big fan of these two. Yeah, I really like them, actually. Case is a weird thing. On the one hand, I feel like her character exists solely to be a female companion for Len, and I hate saying that out loud, because on the other hand, it is cool that there's this badass female rider who comes in and kicks ass and is really cool, and I like that about her. But she doesn't have much of a personality besides being Len's girlfriend. And that makes me a little sad. I don't hate her at all. I actually think she doesn't deserve F or even C. I definitely like her more than these guys for sure. I'm gonna put her right next to Kit because I think they have the same sort of issue where they're just almost there. You know what I mean? Like, they're great characters, but they're just almost there. Almost to the level of like the other ones in terms of like how interesting they are. Up next we have Wrath, and I know what you're thinking. Oh, we don't know Wrath. We only see Xaviax controlling Wrath's body, so like we don't know his personality yet. Yeah, that's why he's an F. We never find out anything about the Earth Wrath, so I'm just gonna put him an F. Some of you may say that I should rank him on the basis of Xaviax, but I'm not gonna do that because we're ranking riders, and Xaviax very specifically isn't a rider. So yeah, I'm just not gonna do that. The last rider we've yet to rank is the Black Dragon Knight, and I'm gonna put him right next to Kit. Mostly because he is Kit. Yeah, that's a spoiler, but like, sue me, all right? Now we have this last suit here that I'm sure you've seen. It's arguable as to whether or not this is a rider. If I were to give you any more details, it's kind of spoilers as to what happens next in the story, but I'm gonna put him an S, and hopefully I'm gonna give you a spiel a little later about the actor that they chose to play the character that has this suit, and I'm gonna hope that that alone kind of gives you an understanding of why I placed him so high. So yeah, looking at the tier list, I don't think I would move anyone up or down. I think these are pretty solid. Brad definitely has a little more motivation than Grant does. But yeah, that's that. The last thing I want to mention in this intermission is that if this video gets 1,000 likes in the first 2 weeks, I will get a tattoo of any of their buckle emblems right here on my wrist. That's 1,000 likes in 2 weeks. I know that doesn't sound like a huge number, but I promise it is for me. Any one of these riders, I will get on my wrist, and it's up to you guys in the comments. Comment which emblem you think I should get, and whichever one I see pop up most, maybe I'll pick like the top 4, and I'll put them in a poll on the community tab and maybe Twitter, where you guys can vote as to which one you think I should get on my wrist. I'm definitely hoping for like Lens or Stings because, like, you know, I really like those characters, but you know, Ryuga's or Onyx, he has a really cool design, and so I definitely wouldn't mind that. I can also see you guys like picking Albert Cho for the meme, so I guess I can't complain. Actually, that is kind of on brand. So yeah, 1,000 likes first 2 weeks. You guys pick in the comments, and I'll put a poll up. Probably if we hit that goal, I'll put a poll up of the top 4 I see in the comments the most, and I'll get it right here on my wrist, and I'll post it to the community tab and whatever. Episode 30, Swan Song. Yeah, you probably know what happens this episode. The team is on the move as they're still being chased down by the NoMen. Case decides that now is a good time to hand Len and Kit their survive mode cards. These are cards that use a great amount of energy that are meant strictly for emergencies. Case only had enough time to grab these two when escaping from Xaviax's initial attack. Suddenly, Len is tackled by JTC, causing the sting and thrust decks to fall from his jacket. James grabs both of them before running off. The 3 riders go after him, leaving the 3 non-riders alone, causing them to be found by Michelle. Kit is the first to find James. Siren and Wing Knight find Wrath and face off. Eventually, the 2 fights coalesce in a scene with all 5 riders. Strike reveals the modifications Xaviax has made to his deck from the previous episode, as he's now able to make contracts with multiple Advent Beasts, allowing him to summon Thrust Rhino and Sting's Mana Ray. He's also able to combine them with his snake to form a monster called Sarah Beast. I've yet to mention any of the actual names of the Advent Beasts because honestly, they never really say them out loud in the show, but all the cards are labeled with their names. Here's a list of each one. Cerebeast is a special case as he's the only one to be renamed from Ryuki for Dragon Knight. And no joke, I'm not even mentioning this like ironically, like not even for like a bit or anything. I genuinely think about the Japanese name for this monster at least once a month. And I think the minute I tell it to you, you'll immediately know why they had to change it. The original name for Cerebeast was Genocider, as in one who partakes in genocide often enough to where it should be labeled as such. That's a crazy fucking name, and I think it's a play on the word like gene, as in like DNA, because it's multiple monsters being like genetically modified together, you know what I mean? And also, you know, the word genocide, I don't know how to properly convey how often I think about this, but it's at least once a business quarter, because I also just like, I think I just like the way it rolls off the tongue. Genocider, genocider, genocider. I don't know, try it, man. This monster is objectively cool as hell, but Cerebeast just like doesn't do it justice. Cerebeast is so powerful that it leaves Len and Kit in critical condition, causing Case to have to fight both Wrath and Strike on her own. This allows Strike to pull a final vent card from his deck, summoning Venosnaker, kicking Siren to the ground. The two evil riders leave the battlefield as Siren begins to vanish. Her deck falls to the ground. Len drops to his knees as he stares into space, looking where the love of his life once stood. He pulls the survive card from his deck and promises to end Strike. Episode 31, Xaviax's Wrath. Len demands Kit go home, saying Strike is his body to claim, but he continues to follow after him and eventually finds Strike, who calls Wrath for backup. Len is able to isolate Strike and transforms into a survive mode, one of the best suits in the entire show, by the way. And bro goes crazy on him, like he is a madman, chasing him down, beating the snot out of him, with James bluffing, saying that he's seen the light and wants to fight for good just to escape from this ass whooping. Len doesn't fall for it, nor does he even care. He vents Strike, leaving 3 decks where he once stood. Xaviax wants to avenge his fallen rider, escalating the conflict, prompting Kit to pull his survive card, transforming into the other best suit in this show. Mid-battle, Kit attempts to form a strategy for him to hold Xaviax as Len performs a final vent, but Len rejects that, not wanting to lose Kit after already losing Case. But as the battle continues, Kit is unable to maintain the survive mode, with it taking a great toll on his body. But Wrath is moments away from venting Wing Knight, so Kit decides to counter Xaviax's attack with his own final vent. The two meet in the middle, and Kit successfully vents Wrath, but unfortunately, at the cost of getting vented himself. And it turns out Wrath's body is vented, but Xaviax still remains, taunting Len and taking the Dragon Knight deck for himself. Michelle arrives to take Len in and shows him a picture. He demands that she take him to the person shown in it. Leading into episode 32, Advent Master returns. Michelle takes the group down a long hallway to reveal the Advent Master. Len presents his deck to the Master's belt, awakening him from his stasis. He unmorphs and greets Len.
Len. Nice Ubulon.
Alright, so I had to re-record this bit because I'm sitting here editing this, and I realized that I really did not do a good job of selling you on how dope the casting is for Master Ubulon. He's played by Mark Dacascos, who is an incredibly successful actor and martial artist who was in a variety of martial arts films in the late 80s, early 90s, that sort of time frame. I may be a little mistaken there. And that alone makes this a really sick casting choice, and it's that merit on it in it of itself for those who know that makes this so fucking cool. But then there's the added layer that he played Victor Lee Scott, which for those of you who don't know, that is Biorhythm Red, the original Red Ranger in Saban's pilot for Bioman. Technically, the Advent Master is played by the original Red Ranger. Like not in the universe of Power Rangers, but the original actor who was meant to play our first Red Ranger when Saban attempted to adapt Bioman. That is Mark Dacascos, and he plays the top level rider, Advent Master, whatever. Do you understand how fucking sick that is? I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if what happened there, but that is incredible. That is incredible casting, and I don't know if it was a coincidence at all, but I am so happy that this happened, and I pray to God one day someone tries to get this guy at a Morphicon or a Ranger Stop or something, just so I could talk to him about it, because that's just so fucking cool. Turns out the Advent Master went missing after a confrontation with Xaviax, where he was vented to Earth and found in Roswell, New Mexico. You know, the place with the alleged UFO crash in 1947? That was Mark Dacascos. He was found frozen by the NoMen and remained in a coma-like state until Len was able to awaken him with his deck. And finally, things have turned around now with the return of the Advent Master, as Ubulon is the only person able to access the Advent Void, which he created as a failsafe for whenever a rider was too injured in battle. They would be sent there to recover and wait for Ubulon to retrieve them. And this also explains why he was vented to Earth, as he's the only one able to enter the Void, so he was vented somewhere that the other riders could retrieve him, causing him to go missing and being in stasis for 41 years. The NoMen present the group with these teleportation beacons, alleging that Xaviax is preparing a mass teleportation of Earth. Ubulon goes to the Void this episode to retrieve the other riders, and gifts Maya the Siren deck to help Len destroy the other beacons Xaviax has already planted, telling her she has the courage to become a rider. She's apprehensive at first, and Ubulon explains that he has the ability to reassign the decks to anyone he chooses, and gifts Maya all of the knowledge of the deck's previous user. Her and Len move out, but they first force her to change her clothes and dye her hair. I don't know, I guess that's a requirement. And I'm happy that Maya gets to be a rider. She definitely deserves it. Also in this episode, Trent is given an ultimatum of joining the NoMen as a hacker or being sent to a prison for cracking into the government database. After accepting the deal, his first task is to develop something to work with this tracker Ubulon gave the team to find all of Xaviax's beacons. Speaking of Xaviax, in this episode, he has a conversation with Adam, the original Dragon Knight. They had a deal where Xaviax allowed Adam to be relieved of all his rider duties, not having to go into stasis every 12 years, so he could spend the rest of his life with his girlfriend Sarah in this made-up pocket dimension created by Xaviax. Now, without any riders left, Xaviax requests Adam find and destroy Len, until he discovers that Maya is now Siren, realizing that means Ubulon is back, now asking Adam to pretend to be Kit to get close to the other riders.
Kit? No. Adam.
Yeah, that disguise doesn't last long. He literally folds the minute he sees Len. Episode 33, Out of the Void. Adam tries to tell Len that he was tricked by Xaviax, but he isn't having it, leading to the two fighting in survive mode. That ends with each of them choking up, not able to vent the other. Len returns, continuing to struggle with his inability to pull the trigger. Meanwhile, this episode, we see the Advent Master search through the Void, which looks suspiciously like how the morphing grid was portrayed in Dino and Cosmic Fury. I'm not saying it's intentional, but like Boom Studios, if you wanted to do something, like you have my email, you know what I mean? He returns from the Void with the original Strike, Axe, and Torque.
These are my brothers in arms, Chance, Price, and Hunt.
These three specifically were picked mostly because they had the easiest Ryuki footage to work with. Maya struggles with how much Strike reminds her of JTC. Ubulon tasks the riders with uploading viruses into the beacons, stating that they shouldn't destroy them since they could be used to teleport the people of Ventara back home. Xaviax sends Adam to befriend Axe, to no avail. And you remember how earlier I said I really couldn't tell the difference between American and Japanese footage?
Just let me explain. Save it, traitor.
Yeah, I see it now. I fucking lied, I guess. Episode 34. Back in Black. Tommy Oliver finally returns after being away for some time, now sporting a new black suit, hence the episode title Back in Black. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I was accidentally reading the script from the Dino Thunder video. That's my bad. Okay. Kit Taylor finally returns after being away for some time, now sporting a new black suit, hence the episode title Back in Black. See, that was my bad. Len, Strike, and Torque infect another beacon. Meanwhile, Strike is hung up with his encounter with Maya from earlier. They run into a group of monsters and are helped out by a black Dragon Knight. The three claim it to be a new rider. After the battle, it unmorphs to reveal Kit.
Kit?
And Len's really happy to see him, and it's actually really wholesome. He was given the Onyx deck by the Advent Master after being brought back from the Void with Case, who still needs to recover from her injuries. At first, Kit is afraid of the deck, but he's assured by the other riders that the dreams he had were his Advent beasts attempting to impose their will onto him, something all new riders must go through. Trent is concerned as Xaviax has gotten smart to the riders' counterattack, and has started cloaking transmitters before they're hacked. Xaviax also has a group of monsters attack Maya, and sends Adam to pretend to save her. Meanwhile, Kit arrives to confront him. He begins to argue with himself, which escalates into a battle, where Kit almost vents the original Dragon Knight. Ubulon interrupts, wanting to hear Adam's side, and brings him back to the hideout to talk to the other riders. Len refuses to hear him out, and walks off. Episode 35, A Hero's Fall. Ubulon invites Len to spar with him, to help blow off steam and figure out why he won't talk to Adam. It's a well done fight scene when they're not posing for the camera, but eventually Ubulon says something that breaks through to Len.
Sometimes listening is harder than fighting. A true warrior must do both.
Maya returns the Siren deck to Case, saying that she likes being a journalist more than a rider, believing that she's better at helping people with her words. At first I was kind of annoyed by this, because it kind of came off like they made Maya a rider for like seemingly no reason. And they kinda did, but I also do like how this shows that her character has some level of agency. She's strong and confident and can fight, but chooses not to regardless of those facts, not wanting to give up on her dream of being a world-renowned journalist. It would have been a bad call to have all of her motivations suddenly change because some man told her to become a writer. And she still can be, she just chooses not to, despite the fact that she's fully equipped to be one. Everyone meets to hear Adam's story. He was approached by Xaviax disguised as Paragon, claiming that he was also from Karsh, like Ubulon, and had the ability to unbond the riders from their decks. And Adam was excited by this, given him wanting a long-term relationship with Sarah and believing the other riders may like to retire as well, given past conversations they've had. After this, Trent discovers 2 transmitters, and Ubulon sends out 2 groups, sending Adam with Len and Torque, and himself out with Strike and Axe. Kit and Case stay back to watch the base, and also because they don't have any Japanese footage. I really feel like Ubulon should be the one staying at the base, given the fact that he's literally the only person that can enter the Advent Void, but like, whatever. And it turns out to be a trap from Xaviax, as they are attacked by monsters, causing Axe to be badly injured. Adam is able to convince Len to hand him the drive used to corrupt the beacons, which he secretly gives to Xaviax to decode, lying to his fellow riders that the beacon has been shut down. Kit is frustrated not being able to help, but Case assures him that part of being a soldier is keeping watch and being prepared for the enemy to attack. Kit is also turned off by Adam, believing he's not telling the full truth, given the fact that he of all people would know his body language better than anyone else. Which, he's right, but Case gaslights him saying he needs to give people a chance.
Like I gave you. Remember?
The riders return to the base, celebrating Adam for deactivating the beacon and putting Axe into a deep sleep to recover. And this is the last episode before the show was canceled. The final 5 episodes of Dragon Knight were put on the 4Kids website and never aired on American television. Meaning that for some of you, this may be your first time seeing these next few episodes if you were a kid like me and had no clue that you could go online to watch the rest of the series. And I want to pause for a moment, not for an intermission necessarily, but to comment on how this was the final note of the show for a lot of people. And it's incredibly disappointing given the fact that we're right in the thick of the final arc of the show. And since we're at the final 5 episodes, I really have no clue why they would cancel Dragon Knight. Everything about this show has been incredible. The acting can be stiff at times, but that's also true of Power Rangers, and while there were some awkward editing choices, the story is engaging and the characters feel real. To end Dragon Knight with only 5 episodes left is incredibly frustrating. But I thank God that they were uploaded online, because not only am I invested in the show, but it's really an important part of not just American, but Toku history in general. I meant American Toku history, not like Dragon Knight is an important piece of American history. I understand that it isn't, alright? With that, we're on to episode 36, Dark Deception. Axe is in critical condition. Len, Torque, and Strike move out with a sense of vengeance to find the missing transmitter.
Be well, my friend.
Kit has coffee with himself, describing to Adam one of the many lessons that he learned from his father, that the ends never justify the means. This is interrupted by a monster fight that Adam decides to sit out, and I think they forgot to mic up Kit during this scene.
Good job.
Thanks.
In the next scene, Xaviax disguises himself as Ubulon to have a conversation with Adam, which escalates to a fight where he uses the master deck to transform. And like, I guess he could just do that? Like, what stopped him from transforming into the Advent Master, like, at all in the show? This really feels like a lazy excuse to use Ryuki footage, to be honest. Michelle finally apologizes to Trent and Maya and gives them her blessing to write an article on the NoMen, as long as she doesn't provide any evidence. Which makes me question why the fuck she would write an article about something she can't show proof of, given the fact that she now has a reputation of making stuff up. But like, the thought is nice, I guess. This leads to her and Kit asking Ubulon a few questions, like how he was able to figure everything out, given how Ventara doesn't seem much more advanced compared to Earth.
That's because I'm not from Ventara.
He reveals that him and Xaviax come from the same planet, Karsh. They fought together in a civil war that left the planet a barren wasteland. Xaviax sent Ubulon to find citizens from other worlds to rehabilitate the planet as slaves, which led to Ubulon creating the transmitters and coming to Ventara. He fell ill upon arriving and was taken in by a family that helped bring him back to shape. After this, he felt uneasy about kidnapping the Ventaran civilians, now having a guilty conscience, leading to the development of the Rider system, where they were able to keep Xaviax away, up until the Advent Master disappeared and Adam turned on everyone. Everyone reconvenes at the end of this episode after the three from the beginning deactivate a transmitter in Africa. Adam is the last to arrive and finds everyone smiling, which he mistakes for them laughing at him, due to his earlier encounter with Xaviax pretending to be the Advent Master, ending the episode with him staring over Ubulon's shoulder. Episode 37. Enemy from Within. Strike finally confronts Maya about her acting weird around him, the issue being that she just can't look at his face without seeing JTC. And now with the team believing that all of the transmitters have been deactivated, Adam decides that it's now time for him to finally vent Len. But he hesitates before he's able to finish him off. He falls to his knees and spills the beans on Xaviax having an antivirus because of him, and that all of their actions have been for nothing. The Riders take Adam in for his fate to be decided by the Advent Master for a second time. An issue I have with the last few episodes of the show is that Kit is never given back the Dragon Knight deck, which feels wrong considering he's the main character of the show and it's literally called Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. And a bigger issue is that Kit kind of fades to the back. Ironically enough, the last 6 or so episodes of the show focus more on Adam than they do on any of our main characters, really. They kind of all take a back seat to Adam's storyline plus all of this world building, and it honestly kind of sucks because, like, as interesting it is to add Adam to the mix, I like our two main characters way more. Instead, they put a hard pause on their storylines to focus on Adam, who is just like unlikable. He's just so self-conscious and narcissistic, and I really just wanted to see him get vented, honestly. Like, I really do not like him, and it has nothing to do with the actor because, like, he's also Kit. Episode 38, For Earth and Ventara. Ubulon's able to clear up the tension with Adam, explaining that the confrontation from before was Xaviax in disguise. Again, I have no clue how Xaviax was able to get an Advent deck, but he never transforms again either, so it doesn't fucking matter. All of the Riders want Adam in the Advent Void, but for whatever reason, they decide to give him a second chance. Fucking sure. Why not? It's not like he helped enslave an entire race. He's just a sweet little boy. He literally fucking betrayed all of his people. But he was tricked into being a fucking murderer. Fucking whatever. Ubulon presents the Riders with their final plan, to use the link vent to sync up all 13 Riders' final vents. They first need to sneak into the base to stop the transmitters from powering up. Unfortunately, there's a force field keeping out anyone with an Advent deck. They plan to sneak in through a mirror and ask Maya if she'd be able to sneak it in.
Not without me, she's not.
Sure, bud.
For Ventara and Earth.
And Earth.
Anyone else catch that Trent doesn't give a shit about Ventara? Y'all notice that? The Riders are just about to go into battle, but first, Len individually approaches each one to give words of encouragement, which really shows his growth as a character. He began the show as this distant, tough guy and self-proclaimed loner, and he's slowly grown into this natural leadership role where he feels responsible for an entire team of riders. I'm happy that they gave him this full circle moment at the end, especially at a time where there's so much to focus on.
Hey.
Be careful.
You too.
Low key, I was Team Mitt. Now, what's his name? Price? I'm Team Mice. Yeah. So they split into groups consisting of those with Japanese footage and those without. Reminder that Onyx and Siren only appear in this one movie that I've been showing in the background of this video. So they gotta find creative ways to separate them as much as possible, which makes them responsible for escorting the two Americans. And you know, it's a beautiful day out. You just ignore all of that. Maya and Trent are able to enter the base, allowing 7 riders to sneak in.
It's totally ninja.
What? They blow up Xaviax generator, but unfortunately for them,
transmitter power at 100%.
Episode 39, For Earth and Ventara, Part 2. Ubulon finally confronts Xaviax just as he's about to activate the transmitters, and he's not alone.
Sorry.
The two begin to clash, with Xaviax claiming that Ubulon sold out their planet. Ubulon explains that it was already in ruins due to the constant war of their people. Karsh is an advanced society, and Xaviax rebuttals that given enough time, Earth and Ventara would have caught up to them and ended up the exact same way. After fighting through an onslaught of monsters, Kit, Len, Adam, and Case arrive to assist Ubulon in fighting Xaviax. They act as a distraction, allowing Ubulon to activate the portal, allowing the remaining Ventaran riders to finally join the battle. They perform the Link Vent, combining all 13 of their powers into one final blast, destroying Xaviax once and for all. But the job's not done. They still need to rescue the Ventarans from Karsh and restore the health of the kidnapped people of Earth.
For Ventara!
Bringing us to the finale, Episode 40, A Dragon's Tale. It's a recap episode, and to its credit, it does catch us up from where the last two left off, meaning that if you were to watch episodes 15, 29, and 40, you would have seen all of Dragon Knight, which is roughly the length of this video if you were to like remove intermissions and stuff. I'm pretty sure. Speaking of intermissions, I feel like we should do one now, considering that like we're at a recap episode and we normally do intermissions here. First and foremost, I want to thank you guys so much for supporting the Bakuwage collection. This was my first time ever dropping any sort of merch or apparel on the channel, and it was incredibly successful. More than I could have ever imagined, and me and Rinky have been nothing but thankful the entire time, and I thank you all for being so patient with getting the pre-orders out and stuff like that. I definitely want to do more drops. Rinky has given me the blessing to make other t-shirts without him, and I'm very thankful for that, and he gave me all the potential skills and know-how that I may need in the future. Super big shout out to him, honestly. I don't know, maybe what would you want to see shirts on, I guess, in the future? I was thinking maybe a specific little shark could make an appearance on a shirt, but I don't know if like, I don't know if there's really an ask for that. Another thing I want to do is remind you of the Patreon. I've taken away the $10 and $20 tiers, mostly because I don't feel comfortable charging any more than $5 for what I offer on there, given how infrequent I have been recently. My plan is to do a lot more now that I've done some things in my personal life that have given me enough time to put it into the Patreon. But you know, just given like the economy and like the state of the world right now, I don't feel super comfortable taking any more than $5 from anyone for anything I do. So you know, it's in the description if you want to support. It really means a lot, but you can literally donate any amount every month and get access to literally everything on the Patreon, so you don't even have to worry about it. And the final thing I want to bring up during this intermission is that I need your help figuring out what's next. I have a ton of video ideas that I'm really excited about, and I'm kind of drawn to all of them. So I figured you guys know what you want to watch, so I'll just ask you what you're most interested in. You know what I mean? I have 4 video ideas that I want to pitch to you, and the idea is that roughly 2 hours after this video is posted, I'm gonna post questionnaire polls or whatever to both X or Twitter and the community tab, and you guys can just vote and let me know which one you're most interested in, or comment it down below. But before you comment or vote, I want you to hear out my pitches for each of these 4 because like I said, I think each of them has something interesting to it. The first one is Kamen Rider Hibiki. Obviously, we just made a video on Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, so we could follow it up with a different Kamen Rider that could be kind of neat or whatever. And a lot of you guys may know that it had a historically very messy production cycle, and I would like to sort of analyze how different that first half is from the infamous second half that everyone claims is so much worse and all that. I feel like that could be a really interesting topic given how much the quality just dropped. Apparently, I've never seen the show, but given how much the quality apparently drops in the second half of this show, I think it's worth analyzing and sort of maybe hypothesizing where the show could have gone if there never was such a massive shift in writing staff and production and stuff like that. The next one is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation. Kind of in an American Toku mood, and I kind of just want to watch this show, I'm not gonna lie. This would also act in my mind as like a backdoor pilot to see, like, basically I want to gauge interest to see if there's any chance I could make these longer videos on stuff that isn't Sentai, Kamen Rider, or Power Rangers. Specifically, I want to make more videos on like the Ninja Turtles. I feel like it'd be really cool to do like a multi-hour long video, maybe like a 1 or 2. I'm trying to cut down the length of these videos, but I feel like it'd be cool to do a longer video on like the 2003 Ninja Turtle series, or really like any of the Ninja Turtle series. And the Next Mutation would kind of give me, it's like that perfect middle ground where it is a Toku, but it's also Ninja Turtles, and I could kind of transition into that. Ninja Turtles would never replace anything on the channel, but it would be like a sort of gauge of interest. I know I said I didn't want to do another Power Rangers anytime soon, but this third entry is Power Rangers Samurai. If you were around on the internet in 2010, 2011, you would know people originally hated this show. Now Gen Z has grown up and they fucking love it. And I think, you know, I'm someone who originally did not like Samurai when they watched it, because I watched Shinkenger, and, you know, it was very close together in terms of when I had watched the 2 shows. But time has passed. Maybe I could revisit Samurai and try and figure out what it is that these people see in it that I don't. And you know, I guess the pitch would be I'm coming to an objective response to Samurai, and we're finally figuring out if it's a good show or bad show, because I am the vindicator and dictator of what is good and bad, I guess. And the last one, I initially just wanted to throw another older Sentai out there, because a lot of people ask me to do long videos on older Sentai after how popular the Live Man video was. And I think the perfect one to do right now is 5-Man. Previous to recent events, everyone believed that this was the show that almost canceled Super Sentai, but apparently that's not the case at all. And actually the second half of the show had some of the best ratings in the franchise's history, even higher than Jetman, which is the show that people claim to have saved the Super Sentai franchise because of how good it is. And like, that recent thing, I guess, event that's occurred has kind of sparked a lot of interest in it, specifically for me, to see like how did it make that turnaround, because I guess the ratings of the first few episodes were terrible, but somehow I was able to save the fucking Sentai franchise. It went from crashing and burning the Sentai franchise to absolutely becoming one of the highest rated shows in the series history. Like, how does that happen? How do you do that? So those are my 4 ideas. Let me know which you like the most. I'm not saying that if one gets picked, I'm not gonna do any of the others, but which one would you guys be most interested in seeing next? Because I would want to know what would be best to follow this up with. Anyways, the final episode of the series does act as an epilogue of sorts in some ways.
All the Ventarans were brought back from Ventara.
Even if it does get shit wrong, I mean, it would have never been an issue if the Ventarans were still on Ventara. Like, that was the whole problem, actually, was that they weren't there. Anyways, Maya reveals that the Earth Riders have also returned from the Void with their memories erased, including Chris, who also had his asthma cured by the Advent Master. Adam retires from being a rider, allowing Kit to fully inherit the Dragon Knight deck, and he's finally reunited with his dad. Trent continues to work with the NoMen full-time, setting up a proper bridge between Earth and Ventara, and Lacey now works at the new and improved Grace's bookstore, with Maya now holding a signing for the book she's authored, titled Mirror World: The Adventures of the Kamen Riders. Kit, Len, and Case even show up in support.
So by the way, I've been meaning to tell you, I'm really sorry about your camera.
And she's now dating Price. Maya fucking won. I know there was never a competition, but like, she objectively won. She's a successful author, and she has a smoking hot boyfriend. It's fucking rap, dude. We're left knowing that there are many more worlds behind the mirrors, and that there are more dangers to threaten those worlds. But no matter what they are, the Kamen Riders will be ready. This isn't the end for Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, as the show was actually readapted for Japanese audiences. Really, it was a dub, but it was a smash hit in Japan. Some fans even claiming that it was better than Kamen Rider Ryuki, which I haven't talked about much in this video, but from what I remember, I would have to agree. The plot of Ryuki can be needlessly convoluted, and most of the riders are pretty forgettable outside of the main four. But like, Dragon Knight's not that much better, because Ryuki is still like objectively a good show. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10, where I'd give Dragon Knight like an 8 out of 10, or maybe like an 8.5 out of 10. But the Japanese dub did bring some interesting follow-ups in two specific ways. Kamen Rider Dragon Knight Special Event is a stage show consisting of various interviews of the cast for the Japanese dub, along with some line readings and a few fight scenes. Thank you to Shindo Chrono 3 on Twitter for giving me an explanation of like what this was about, and also thank you to Riley C1608 for actually sending me a link to the show. Very much appreciated. The show was also given a sequel story in the form of a novel titled Kamen Rider Dragon Knight 2 World 1 Hearts. And bad grammar aside, I cannot find a copy of this book anywhere. I tried looking it up on eBay, I tried Googling the ISBN, I've tried a million things to find this book, but I cannot find a single website to navigate without Google Translate. But it would have been a really cool prop for this moment. So with that being said, I present you with Henry Winkler's autobiography. 2 World 1 Heart takes place roughly a year after the series finale. The riders have decided to celebrate the anniversary of Xaviax's defeat with a party on Ventara. Kit and his father are set to attend, but are unable to make it after the link between Ventara and Earth is broken, and it's made worse when leftover monsters from Xaviax's army begin to show up. So with the help of the NoMen, Kit has to work with the Earth Kamen Riders to take down this new threat, including Len's Earth counterpart, Brian Mace, and Colonel David Stewart inheriting the Onyx deck. Unfortunately, that's all I can say about this book without actually reading it, but from what I hear, it's actually pretty good. So, the final question. Is Dragon Knight a failure? Yes and no. The show objectively has not hit the cultural canon to the same degree as Power Rangers, VR Troopers, Beetleborgs, and really any 90s Toku adaptation. On the one hand, I want to call this show really ahead of its time for being a children's superhero drama with amazing fight scenes, engaging character arcs, and, you know, captivating stories. But maybe it was actually too late for its time. This premiered in an era where Saturday morning cartoon children's blocks were starting to fade out. And considering the big tokusatsu adaptation boom of the 90s, this would have definitely stood out a lot more if it had the hype of that entire era behind it. But Dragon Knight was definitely able to find a following in Japan, a culture that's far more receptive to Toku, for obvious reasons, and through online communities that have an affinity for these kind of shows as well. Which should tell you that it's definitely not a bad show, it just never hit the right audience. Maybe Dragon Knight is a commercial failure, but I'm really glad it exists. And as long as people keep talking about it, I hope it'll encourage others to maybe check it out eventually. And, you know, keep the legacy alive. So that maybe eventually, one day, it'll get the flowers it deserves beyond our niche internet communities. But until then, I'm more than happy to sing its praises whenever it's brought up. Thank you so much to Rat Toku and Andrew B for subscribing to the Patreon. Remember to vote in the community tab for what you'd like to see next, and while you're there, check out this 3-hour-long video about another American Toku from my childhood.